Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to episode 7, I want to say. At least episode 6 of our Learn to Code series here on DevChatter. So, if anyone is here for the first time, I want to welcome you to DevChatter, and specifically our Learn to Code series. And I hope that you follow along with us, learn something, whether you are a beginner to C# or whether you've been using it for many years. Either way, I hope that you have fun, follow along, and maybe help others along the way. So, first thing I notice, I actually have an update for VS Code that I am going to install here, so I apologize for the screen doing craziness there while I get all that going. But that's something that you can expect. So that little icon there popping up to have a little number there means there's an update. And if you see that on your copy, make sure that you update as well at some point. It's Batman. Hello, welcome. I'm betting a bunch of people are here in chat, and just to get things started, let me go ahead and start up our bot so it is there to chat with all of us while we are working on some code together. Okay, so if you are new here, you may not know exactly what it is that we do on this channel and why we're all here and what we're doing. So I will bring you up to speed. So my name is Brendan, says it right there under me, and I go by Brendonius on the internet in a lot of places, says it right over there. And then the other thing that I want to mention is that this here channel is DevChatter. Normally what we do here is a lot of programming together. We kind of mob it, so you and I talk a little bit about what we're coding and why and what we're working on. And we have a few projects that we're working on. One of the big ones is we are doing our chat bot, and that's actually the bot that just said, hello world, the bot has arrived in the chat window, if you saw that. I noticed more people showing up. Coated Beard, SNB, welcome everybody. That chat bot is our main project here. We like it a lot, and we have some interesting things we want to do with it. One of the first things is fix the interesting bug that causes it to, 1 minute after starting, spam the chat with a whole bunch of messages. And we're going to fix that. We already know what causes that one. We just need to make it so it queues things up every time instead of the way that it is working right now. So that's a small adjustment. We'll tweak that and get it working. But those are the kinds of things we normally work on. It is programming real-world applications. And part of the way that we make it real-world is we use it. And as soon as someone is actually depending on that application to work, as I am, as a streamer, then it becomes a real-world application. So one thing I want to mention to everybody, and especially if you are new here, if you are building something that you yourself intend to use, that's a real-world application. So don't feel bad about like, oh, I'm just working on a sample thing. If you're going to use it, real world. Okay, so what I want everybody to do in order to get set up here. Hey everybody, welcome. I see more people saying hi as they come in. Rusty Honda, Draco, I'm doing pretty well. Feeling a lot better than I did yesterday. I think it was just weather changes get my sinuses going, and I'm a nerd. I think you guys probably figured that one out. Yes, Draco, we are on to episode 92 of DevChatter. This is our 7th episode of our Learn to Code series here on DevChatter, but we have done 91 previous episodes. So, really, really crazy when you think about that. Okay, so I have an interesting message here from VS Code suggesting that I switch to a new thing, but I'm going to take a look at that later. So I just X'd out of it. SNB, I have not yet figured out what I'm going to do for episode 100, but if people have suggestions, let me know if you've got ideas for what we can do for episode 100. I want to make it a good one. And if people do want to get involved in any discussions about anything we're doing here, the best place to do that is to join our Discord. You will be in good company. There are at this point, about 200 other developers that are in our Discord. So plenty of people to talk to and chat about with stuff. It's going to be as active and good as everyone wants to make it. So hope to see you there. Okay, other things I need to cover. I said this a moment ago, but there is the series we're doing right now is our Learn to Code in C# series. So I'm going to load this up so you guys can see what I'm talking about. This is the series, and in it, we have done all of these other previous episodes. So as I do these, I try to still make it so that it's approachable. So if you were not here for the first 6 episodes, that's okay. We will still try to make it so that you can follow along. But my main recommendation, if you are new, follow along with us today, and then after the fact, go back through our previous ones to catch yourself up with the parts you missed. So as I said, if you are first time here and you do want to learn to code, follow along with us today. And if you follow that link that I posted in chat, it'll take you here, and you can start watching these videos in order, starting with the first one, and then you can just load up the second one, and on through. So that's all you need to do, and it'll get yourself set up. So the next thing I want to mention is, in order to follow along, there are some things that you'll need to install on your computer. These are fairly light installs. They're small pieces of software, and we specifically chose the set that we're recommending you use for this web series by saying, by choosing these ones. These are not very intimidating ones. So programming in general is intimidating. Learning to code is intimidating. And so that's why we try to make the install process as easy as we can. So we have 3 things for you to install. The first one is Visual Studio Code, and that is the text editor that we're going to use. So the first URL is this one. Go out here, download it for Windows or whatever operating system you've got. The website will probably figure out what operating system you're on when you go here, so you'll get the right one, probably by default. It can usually tell. But if not, download the right one. You can choose it by clicking the arrow. And once you do that, that will get you your text editor, and it's going to look a bit like this when you load it. So programming text editors, they're kind of nice. Yours might not be the dark theme. Mine's the dark theme. I don't remember what the default is, but I've changed to that. Yours might just be colors different, but same program. Okay, the next thing that we want you to install is the .NET Core SDK. So that is a fancy way of saying Software Development Kit. And essentially all that is that's the code that's required to run your C# code in .NET Core. So it's code that helps you to run code. So that's how we get to program so much better than we had to as developers decades ago. Our languages are much easier to use now. So go ahead and download this. It's the first link here. So when you go to this website, you want .NET Core SDK. So download .NET Core SDK. It's that one right there. You click on that, and it's going to download a thing that I'm going to cancel because I don't really want it. But you download that, and you will be able to run that installer as well. So run both of those, and then you're ready to run C# code. Okay, the last thing that we want you to do is not required to run C# code, but will help you immensely. We recommend that you do this. Once you've loaded this program, Visual Studio Code here, after you've done both of those installs, on the left, you'll find this little box icon here. This thing is the extensions section. The extension that we want to install is called C#. And so if you just search for C# right there, you will get this as one of your results. Now, I already have it installed, but all you need to do is click on this. It'll open this up. You'll see this icon. It's going to say Microsoft. That's how you know you found the right one. And then this icon for you is going to say install instead of uninstall. Once it installs, it'll then say something like reload for reloading the window, and you're going to click that as well. And that'll actually restart Visual Studio Code, and you should be all set up. Once you complete those 3 steps, you are ready to follow along with us. And we have a quick confirmation that we want to do once you've installed all 3 of those that will help us to make sure that you've got everything you need. Okay, let me read chat and figure out what everybody said while I was talking, because I wanted to get through my quick spiel about all the setup first, and then while people are doing that, then we'll cover how to verify it once I've answered these questions. So let's see, what did people say? Those were some hellos. Am I going through for each while, for etc.? Draco. We will be doing for each loops, while loops, and for loops today. So yes, that will be some looping will be part of what we do today. Okay, so maybe come up with an idea for a group project the viewers can code in with you to get everyone involved for the 100th episode. Oh, that's actually a really cool idea, Rusty. I might do something like that, and that gives me an idea, so thank you for the suggestion. And I think you will like the way I go with that. Chucklestone, hey, welcome. VFRZ, hello. Stefanos, welcome, thanks for following. What if you want to be a fisher? Do I then click on the whale icon? Worldwick, I have no idea what you're talking about. I must have missed something. Draco, yes, we will be covering some basic looping stuff in our coding today. If you need help with those loops, you can message me privately for info. And yes, awesome, a Rusty Honda. So that is exactly what we want to see is, if you are in chat and you're not a beginner and anyone has any kind of question, feel free to help them out answering the question. I will explain it as best I can, but not everybody learns the same way. Not everybody has the same understanding. It's one of the reasons why I love internet community is if you maybe didn't understand someone else's explanation of a concept in programming, maybe you'll show up here and understand mine. Maybe you won't understand mine. Maybe you'll understand someone else's. So the nice thing is there's a lot of different perspectives on the same concept. So, okay. Tedious One, welcome. Thanks for following. And Haku1581. So, normally I'm running Visual Studio here on the channel. It's actually right behind this, running some other code. But for this stream, we are doing our Learn to Code in C# that is more focused on a beginner level, and some people have mentioned, hey, Visual Studio Code's actually sometimes harder to use than Visual Studio, which is sometimes true. However, the barrier to installing and getting Visual Studio Code set up is much lower than the one for Visual Studio. And there are a lot fewer options in Visual Studio Code. So this editor that we've got you in, so if you are one of the beginners, we're starting you here. A lot of professional programmers use this. I use this. Many others use it. And I also use the other one as well that he was referencing. He or she was referencing, I actually don't know. And the idea here is we want to start you with the one that does not have a barrier and you can get started with today, right now, and not have to install like a 15 gig program just to try programming. So that's the idea. And hello, Tedious One. Greetings. Okay, so first thing we want to do is we need to confirm that your installs worked. So I'm hoping I delayed enough talking with people for anyone that was installing stuff to get all that set up. And if you did, I hope you got to this point. And then once you've got this running, I want you to toggle the terminal. And it should say down here, for you somewhere on this screen, if you close out the other windows, toggle terminal somewhere. And it says for me control backtick, which on a US keyboard is control, and then the backtick is just above the tab. It's on the same key as the tilde, and it brings up the terminal. If you can't find the keyboard shortcut for it, no problem. The other way to find it is to go up to View, and then go down to the word terminal, right here. And that will open it also. And I want to also mention that you'll notice there used to be a bar here on the left. We had it open for looking for the extensions, but if I click on the file piece here, that will bring up my Explorer window and it'll show me the files that are here. Now, when you start it up, there's something else that I'm going to have you do, and other people in here, don't let me forget to mention to open the folder. But what we want to do first is we want to find out if you got things installed correctly. So come down to your terminal window, and I'm going to bring this up so you guys can see it. And I want you to type in .net, all one word, so it says .net, and go ahead and hit enter. And this should come back with some kind of result like this. It should not be an error message, it should be this. If it doesn't look something like this, then you did not get everything installed right, and message in chat and one of us will try to help you figure out what went wrong in the install. The next thing, if this came up, I want you to just type .net and then say --info. And yours is not going to look like mine this time, but I still want you to run it because I want you to see something that comes back that looks like this. Microsoft Net Core app kind of thing. You might have, you know, .NET Core SDKs installed. There should be at least one listed. I have a ton listed because I've installed a lot of different SDKs. So that's the basic setup that we've got here. You want to run this as long as you get back valid results for this. You don't need to make sure they're perfect. You don't need to verify anything like that. But as long as you got something back, you're probably okay. So I'm going to hide that away for a second, shrink that back down. Check on chat, just some hellos, and then Haku, how long are you going to be live? We are usually live here on the channel for about 2 hours, so most streams are about that long, and we've been going for about 20 minutes, which on my Learn to Code episodes I take a lot longer to get started because I want to make sure that I give all of you time to do installs and things like that and get the software running if you're following along. So, okay. Hopefully you are able to make it back for some more, and if you're not, don't forget we keep everything here recorded, so you can check the video section here on Twitch, and also videos will eventually go live on YouTube, though those are on a delay. So if you're watching this on YouTube, remember you can catch us earlier and live on Twitch. Okay, so where do we go from here? We've got this program running and we want to write some code. The first thing I want you to do is go up to the File window, and I want you to do Open Folder. And welcome everyone that is over from Code Rushed. So if you were sitting around watching Mark today, the auto host just triggered, so you are all now joining us here on DevChatter. We're doing a Learn to Code in C# episode. And Haku, thank you for the follow, much appreciated. Okay, so what I did for the stream and what I do for all of our Learn to Code streams, because these are not like long-running projects, I'm just doing, these are just going to be like short, you know, we can follow along and work on it. I put them in folders that I just name based on the date. So I did 2018 August 20th as the date of my folder, and I just named it that. So I'm going to select that folder, click Select Folder, and now I have an open folder. You can see the contents of it listed here. It's an empty folder. You can see the name right there, so that's how I know I've got it open. Okay, so .NET new console. The thing I want to type in eventually is this, .NET new console. But we've already seen what happens when we type in the word .NET. That is going to return back that information screen we saw before. And when we did that, you'll notice it says usage. So it's trying to help us here. It's trying to tell us, hey, you need to do something more. You can't just say that. You need to tell us something else. So specifically what we want to use it for is the word new. And when I do this, it again is going to try to help. And I'm teaching you guys this way because I want you to see that the command line is not as scary as it really seems at first. So .NET new, it then printed this out. It said, welcome to .NET Core, tells us some other stuff. And then down here, what it ends up saying is, it gives us some suggestions for templates. Because it said, again, usage, it said new and then options. So one of the options that I can give is what template I want to use. And the template we want to use today is going to be a console application. So that means this is going to be a command line program. And one of the reasons we use command line programs for teaching programming languages is the fact that you don't have to deal with the clutter of a UI. You don't have to deal with understanding how a UI works and that kind of thing, because that's a separate concept. We want you focusing on one thing at a time, and that's the programming and the programming language. And so we're going to choose console again. So it says console application. I could type that in, but it's got a short name here of console, so that's what we're going to do instead. So I'm going to type .NET new console. Now, since I didn't tell it what I wanted the project to be named or anything like that, it comes up with some names for me. They're not ideal, but it's enough to get us going. So .NET new console, it comes back, it says, hey, it did some things, it restored some files. Don't worry about the stuff that it did. What you want to make sure is that you end up with something inside this folder. Remember, our Explorer window used to be empty. It should have a few files in it now. The files should be these. The CSproj file, and I'm going to pull this out of the way so you guys can see again. It's this file. Don't mess with this file. Leave this one alone for now. This is a concept that we don't need to talk about here on the channel, but it should be here. This is the file that sort of determines how our project's going to work. It's not our actual code. This is the C# code that we're writing. So right here, if I want to run this, all I have to do is come down to the well, first off, get rid of this stupid message. I'm going to say not now because I don't actually need it right now. But once that window's away, so if you get messages like that, you can say yes, no, it's up to you. It'll do some various things that I'm not going to talk about on the stream. But I can explain if someone does end up running into issues with them. Okay, so here in the terminal, I want you to type in .NET Run. And once you've done this, it will actually run your code. So congratulations, everybody. If this is your first time here, your first time coding, and you just typed this in and typed .NET Run and it said hello world, you are now a programmer. You have created your first program that did a thing. Now, let's take you to the next level. So, I want you to come in here. Change the word world to DevChatter. And then go ahead and do a Control-S, save the document. Come down here again, .NET Run Us, and now it should say hello DevChatter. So now you've run your first program, you've made your first change to it, so this one is uniquely yours. You typed in that word, even if it was the same thing I typed in. You have now written code. So congratulations. Okay. So there was a request from Draco to make sure that I covered a couple of points today. So I will make sure that we cover all the loops today, even though we may not actually have need to use the 3 main loops. And I apologize, I'm using an invisible cup today. Okay. Let's see. Need to get that set up. What we're going to do today is... We are going to do... Where is it? Hang on. Who just followed? Oliver, welcome. Thanks for following. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? I thought Steve had a copy of it. Okay. I don't think we can get away with that. No, okay, he doesn't have good instructions for that. Okay, in that case, we're going to do a slightly different one. So the kata I was planning on doing, I don't have great instructions for, so we're going to do something else. As a quick explanation for anybody that is in there, there are actually programming exercises, sometimes called katas and other things like that, that are actually... They're training for developers. They're designed for professional developers, but some of them take a pretty simple approach. So last week, on Monday, we did our previous Learn to Code episode, and in that episode, we did a programming exercise called FizzBuzz, and that is also a very common programming exercise. I was looking for the instructions to do the prime factors kata, which is another programming exercise that's pretty common for professional developers to do. Since I couldn't find that one, I am actually going to have us do one that we have done previously in our Learn to Code series. Now, that's actually still a good thing, and I'm going to explain why. So, in programming, you are often going to have to write very similar things to code you've written before. So I have written, for example, an advertising engine. So online advertising, so think like banner ads shown on websites, that kind of thing. I have written those for various websites. I've done that multiple times for different companies. The code was not the same. The way it was implemented is very different. The actual way that the businesses modeled that changed drastically as well. And so the idea is, even though I was writing the same kind of thing, the code was actually very different. And as you program more, you will discover the same thing. You're going to do the same kind of code over and over again. And we also, in addition to that, like to know that we're doing things in a good way. A Rusty Honda, yeah, you can't link in the chat. Nightbot will yell at you about that. But I see that you were referencing codewars.com, and we have used that website before. It's a great place for learning to code. Okay, so I want to get you all started in here because this is where you can learn some basics. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is this. I want you to write some basic code, and actually that's a good point, Rusty Honda. We might do that. I want you to do this. Follow along. Go ahead and type the word for. And then after you type the word, so F-O-R, and then just wait a second. And you should have this thing pop up. Once it is there, you'll notice that it gives you a bunch of options. The one I want you to do is this second one. So notice both of these just say the word for. But when I go to the second one, that second box appears on the right. Hey, Jen's Duck, welcome. Yeah, this one just shows up here, and once it's there, you can hit tab. Now, the way that you know it's this second one and not the first one is the fact that it says that in that part that pops over to the right, it says for loop C#. So it's telling you this is the one for C#. So it's coming in from that C# extension that we had you install. So go ahead and hit tab, and it will create this whole thing for you. Okay, this is a confusing structure, and I'm going to give a bit of explanation about it. So, normally in programming, as you'll learn, we don't like single-letter variable names. So variables, think your old math classes where you're like solve for x, and in math class they had you do like a single-letter variable name, and you're like, you got to remember like, what is the x, what's the y, what's the h, what's the l, what's the, like, what are all these various things? You got to remember, like, they're single letter. It's not very clear what's going on. In programming, we have so much extra space. We're not worried about taking up space on a piece of paper. So write a clear name. Like, don't go crazy, but there are a couple of exceptions. So I could write the word index here, and that is actually why it's I. This is for indexing. But the letter I is commonly used in a for loop. So in this case, it's just so common and it's not really doing anything. So we just let ourselves get away with that one being a single letter. So don't mind that one. And then I want to say 10. So what I did was I typed it, I had the letter I, and then I hit tab, and then it moved me over to this part. And now if I hit tab again, it completes the whole structure. Okay, so I got int I equals 0. I is less than this, that. The quick explanation, because I do want you all to understand for loops, this is hugely important, so if anyone here doesn't understand them, I am first going to show you what this does, and then I'm going to explain the code. So I cut that, and I pasted it inside the for loop, so my code now looks like this. So this console write line is inside of the for loop. The way we know it's inside of it is those curly braces actually delimit a block of code, and that is the code that we're going to do for that time period that is defined. This is the definition of the time period. Like, I'm giving you sort of fuzzy explanations here. Someone that knows coding really well is going to yell at me for some of those words I'm using, but it's good for understanding the basics. So down here, I want to go ahead and do .NET Run one more time and hit enter. And whoa! It just says hello DevChatter 10 times now. So that's crazy. Hey, I heard coding, welcome. Oh, right, Jen was here. Forgot, we got the ducks. And April, welcome, thanks for following. Okay, so, we said hello DevChatter 10 times now, so that was good. Why, thank you, Sam Who Swam. I do enjoy this hat. Isn't it nice? This is a rubber ducks hat. Yeah, rubber ducks. So, it did this 10 times. Now, why did it do it 10 times? Here is the reason. So in the for loop, this first part here, this right here, int I, this we declare a variable. So that declares a variable. And then this part here sets limit, and then increments. Now, again, I will warn, I am, yeah, Jeff took over the stream, there's a guy in a hat. And I missed who followed, but welcome, thanks for following. No, I'm not really going to wear a hat all stream. Yes, we need a quack command. Hey, I'm doing well, April. We're doing a good stream. So, the first part here, as I mentioned, that declares the variable that we're going to use. This is actually unnecessary. That code doesn't technically need to be there. There's some weirdness here. There's crazy things that you can actually do with for loops that I'm not going to show today, but if you are one of the more advanced programmers, show up to one of my regular episodes and ask me to show you something crazy with a for loop, and I will. Okay, so, Bjornir 2, hopefully I said that right, but welcome, thanks for following. So, this loop, we know runs 10 times. So, I can save this, I can run it, it definitely runs 10 times. Why 10? Let's talk about this. The first time through this loop, what happens is, it runs this code here, int I equals 0. So, int I equals 0. So this is a variable declaration. I can do my own variable declarations here. My number equals 12. And I can do some fancy stuff with this. I can use my number down here. Instead of printing out hello DevChatter, I could just print out my number. I saved the file, and I'm going to type .NET run again and run this. Yeah, exactly, Meandering Leaf. I will show you all crazy stuff with a for loop if you want to see it. Okay, so notice it printed out the number 12. Because what I'm able to do is I'm able to store this value into the variable my number. And what I can then do is I can just use this somewhere else. So I could use it down here as well. I could say, can you tell that I like, what number, what did I choose, 12 even? Yeah. I don't even know if I like the, you know, now that I think about it, I do like the number 12. Okay, so I can put that down there, and I'll explain what I just did in a moment. Whoops. Derp. I don't know why I did that. Okay, so can you tell I like the number 12? And all this stuff works. So, yeah, exactly. Hello, Meandering Leaf. I can show you some absurdities you can do with for loops that are kind of fun. Okay, so, can you tell that I like 12? Yep, you can, because I printed it out 12 times. So the idea being, I can then reuse that variable wherever I like, but I can do some other things with it too. I could, for example, say, instead console write line my number plus I, and then say, you know, whatever. And so now I get, you know, 12, 13, 14, 15, all the way up to 21. So I can do things with it, I can manipulate it. Once I store it in that variable, I can still make a lot of changes. See ya, Rusty Honda. Yeah, you can all check out, if you do need to duck out early, you can check the video and catch up later. And keep in mind that our next episode's tomorrow. If you do want to catch us live again, tomorrow we're going to be doing some good stuff in our C# and ASP.NET Core application. Okay, so that's my variable. I'm going to get rid of it because I don't need it. That's not what I want to focus on here. I want to explain how this for loop works. So this, you'll notice, is the exact same thing that we did to create my number. That is a variable declaration. What we did is we defined a type of integer, named the variable as I, and we set its initial value, so we said equals 0. So this is a variable declaration right here. Okay, next thing that we've got. So that's declare. Then we set a limit. This is an expression that is going to evaluate to either true or false. So in this case, I said I is less than 10. I could have said I is less than 5. Save the code. And I can run the code down here as well. Now, I made a slight change to the code to illustrate a point. I printed out the value of I in this so that we can see what it is. The first time we go through this loop, we print it out, it has a value of 0. We know that because we set it right here. The second time, it seems like it has 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4. And it doesn't run it doesn't run for the number 5. So we know that I is getting changed, and eventually it probably reaches 5, and we say, well, I is less than 5. Well, I is not less than 5 anymore, and so we bail out of the loop. And that's how the for loop works. We keep going until we reach this condition, and then we leave the code and get to the code down here. So I could say console write line, and I could say we left the loop. And when I save this and run it, you'll see it goes 0 through 4 and then says we left the loop. Hello, Wally. Welcome. Okay, so we get down there, we left the loop. So that means when I reaches 5, we leave the loop. Well, that's cool. How did I increase in value? Well, that's what the increment is for. And that right there is a special command in C#. It's in a number of languages. The ++ operator just says, increase my value by 1, is all that means. So if you've ever heard of the programming language C++, that was actually a joke. That name is like an in-joke for programmers, because if I had a variable named C, and yes, there is a programming language called C, and I said C++, that means, hey, I increased the value of C by 1. So that's the joke of C++, is it increased the value of C by 1. So C++ was a slight improvement on C. That was the gag. So, new thing you learned today. And if you've heard of the programming language C#, yes, that's the one we're using. Sharp, of course, being a music concept, sharp is a slightly higher version of a note. So C# is slightly higher than C. Again, a programmer joke on we made it slightly better, like slightly above C. So this is slightly higher level C. There's the concept. C++? Exactly, yes. You got it, Interfector. And hey, Brave Cobra, welcome. So that is actually how the for loop works. What it does, it's the first time you go into the loop, it runs this code to get things set up. So that run once to get things. Actually, I'll write it like this. We're gonna say run once to get things set up. Checked each loop to see if done, and run after each loop. So that is actually how they work. This first part, we do at the beginning of the time before we start the loop the first time. This one runs at, this one is then checked every time before we go into the loop to see whether or not we need to run it. And this last one is run at the end of each loop before we start back over. Oh, that's also neat, S&B. I hadn't thought about that. So S&B is pointing out that that structure right here, just like that, makes a little sharp symbol. So, and you've seen someone do a loop where it was it was pretty interesting to see, different from that. Yes, Mr. Zev, so that's why I was mentioning, for anybody in here who's going to be at our regular streams, go ahead and ask me, and I'll show you some crazy stuff that you can do with these. Because I mentioned this is the standard way you're going to see them. Everywhere you see a for loop, expect to see this. If someone's doing something else with a for loop that isn't like this, be questionable of it, because they're probably doing something crazy. But yeah, Zev, that is absolutely a fun thing that you can do, and that's what I'm talking about, is you can do crazy things with a for loop. Also, you can do crazy things with a green cup in front of a green screen. Yes, if you forget the middle statement, I could do this, for example, and this will do terrible things. See the terrible thing it's doing? This is the program going crazy. It will run forever until it eventually crashes. So, next tip that I want to give everybody, if you ever have a runaway program that won't stop, and you're in the command line, I want you to do one thing. I want you to hold the control key, and then I want you to hit the C key. So this is the same command as like a copy in a copy and paste in any other program. When you're in a console window, a terminal window like this, that actually does what I'll call a cancel command, because that's the best way for you to remember it. It's the word cancel, starts with C, and that will cancel your program and get you out of it. So if you ever get caught in something like that where your program's just running out of control, and yes, Mr. Zev, it will eventually crash, but that was going to take a while before it would. Wheel spin, the reason that compiles is that there are some cases where that could happen. Yeah, exactly. As S&B pointed out, there's that. Yeah, I could memory overflow, but I don't think I'm going to hit that one. Assigned int does not go crazy. It's not absurdly high, but it was going to take forever to get us there just writing all of this in here. So first thing I want to do, I'm going to undo that. We're going to go back to the I less than 5, and we're going to run this. Okay, so there we go. That runs and says we left the loop. So perfect. That's a for loop. This is the basic use case for a for loop. So a lot of times you might be like, oh yeah, we want to do this like 100 times. So we're going to run it 100 times, and it goes and it runs, and boom, 100. So it printed out 0 through 99. Now some of you might be wondering, well hang on, I want my numbering to go from 1. Why did it default to that? And I could do 1 to less than or equal to 100, and that makes more sense to me. Now that might make more sense to you, but I'm going to caution you against that. Because I just changed this and we went from 1 up to 100. The reason why, actually it's 2 billion something, wheel spin and Zev. It's a little over 2 billion, because an unsigned integer is a little over 4 billion. Okay, so let's see, we did that. Here is why we caution you against it. In programming, InterVector, we use a 32-bit integer, not a 64-bit integer, is the default integer in C#. So, yeah, exactly. As Mr. Zev said, the highest number that this type that we use here, here, I can do this. So I'll print out int.maxValue, and you'll see that's the number. So this is the biggest number that an integer can actually store in C#. I'm already using system? Okay. And if you use, we actually have larger integers, so it's a bigger type. So this is the one InterVector was talking about, and it actually has a much bigger number. So you can tell that second number is just a little bit smaller than that one, isn't it? just a bit. Oh man. Sorry. Yeah, Mr. Zev. These are the same thing. So for anybody that's in here, this is the exact same number. C# just has 2 ways of writing it. So sorry about that. Okay, why would you use Int64 instead of long? Yeah. Oh, okay. See you, Mr. Zev. Have fun. Okay, so that's our for loop. The reason I want to caution you against this, using 1 to 100 instead of 0 to 100, is this. I've talked before about these, but let's make a collection. And our collection, what we're going to do here, I want you to type in this exactly as I just wrote it. Write the word list, and then a less than sign, the word string, and then a greater than sign, and that's a capital L on list. And then I want you to hold Control and hit the dot key. And when you do that, it's going to pop up this little window here, and this is your helper that can write some code for you. So notice up at the top, it currently says using system, and that's all it says up there. There's nothing else up here. When I hold Control and I hit dot, and I pick this first option here, it writes the word using system collections generic. So in programming, we don't have access to everything we want at all times. Sometimes what we actually have to do is we have to include additional code for us to use. So we're using other code that exists in our code. There are collections that allow us to store, I'll say limitless amounts of integers, because it's more than we usually need to do anything with. And I can store hundreds, I can store thousands, I can store millions of records inside of these collections. So, I mean, they really are big things because of the way they're written, and I'm not going to get into that right now, but I will briefly explain how they work. So, I'm going to call this names. And what I want to do, so remember, in a variable declaration, it's type and then variable name, and then you do an equals sign to give it its first value. And I want this to be a new list of string. So for the integers we created, we could just put in a raw number, but for some of the more complex things like a list, we actually have to define a new instance of that variable type. And the way that we do that in C# is we say new, and then we list the type that we want to create. So that's the type again. You'll notice it's the same as it was before the variable name. And then we use open close parentheses. And sometimes they require a parameter, and if we did that, we would put that in here. So we would put the value in here. So it could be like, maybe it needs a number. Okay, but for our collection, we don't need this. So then, what I want to do is I want to say names.add, and I want to add an item to this collection. So I'm going to add Brendan. And the way I do that is I say names.add with a capital A, and then I open parentheses and pass in the string Brendan. And I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to pick a name from chat. We will say too soon for auto? Cryptrix, what do you mean too soon for auto? But congratulations. We're going to put you in there as crypt. Okay, so I create a collection, and let me go ahead and just run this code again. I'm not done. I'm not using those for anything, but I want to make sure that my code works. So by running it, I can say, hey, this code works. Oh, yeah, sorry, Cryptrix. What he's saying there is that we have the word var. Now, the reason I'm not showing the word var is that I want to make a connection here. I want to explain to everybody. So when they see this here, int I equals 1, they know, oh, I'm declaring an integer. When they see this, they know I'm declaring a string. But yes, that is absolutely correct. As everybody's pointing out, I do not have to write the word list of string here. I don't have to put that here. I can actually just put in the word var, and this will do the same thing. So by putting in the word var, what actually happens is I'm letting C# put that in for me. So when we run this code, what actually happens is before the code runs, C# comes along and replaces my word var with list of string. And it does that for me automatically. So I do not have to type that myself. C# will take care of it. So that's actually what people in chat are talking about. And either one works the same. There will not be a difference in your code, which way that you do it. Plutonin. That is a great question. So, for those names, because people are asking, I am going to show you what I would consider the best practices. How to declare int. If you have a variable like an integer, int is a 3-letter word. Writing the word var doesn't save you anything. You might as well write the word int. If you have the word bool, I would also say this is also recommended. Now keep in mind that all of these things I mentioned is Plutonin says what's a best practice, and I will tell you that best practices is a really dangerous word, so I will give you what my preferences are and the explanation for why I do it this way. If you don't like the way that I do it and want to do it the other way, you are welcome to do that. So one of the great things about programming is we don't have to agree on how to do it. Now, I will say that within any given team of developers, you should agree on your conventions and follow the same set. So even if they're not the ones you like. Okay, so this should be written with an int. This should be a bool. This one I've got here, this names, I would recommend that you use the word var here. Now, the reason that I mentioned to use var here when you're coding and not explaining, so I'm explaining a concept, so that's why I didn't use the word var here. But the reason I recommend using the word var is we already wrote the type once on the line. So if the type is already on the line, I recommend you use var so you don't repeat it. If, however, the type is unclear, so for example, I could say, let's say we had this. Var, what do we want to say? Get people in chat. We're going to say people in chat equals get people in chat. And now I'm going to do one quick thing. I'm going to make a method. And hang on, everybody. I'm going to do a thing real quickly. Nope, I meant to put you on this one. Here we go. So now I am going to say one quick thing here. And we're back. Welcome back, everybody. Sorry about that. I wanted to hide my code from you. So my question to everyone: on line 14 there, I have a variable that I've declared called people in chat. Can anyone tell me the type of that variable, people in chat? Because occasionally other developers tell me that they use var all the time. Does anybody know what type that is on line 14? Anybody at all? What type is that variable? Exactly. It depends on what get people in chat returns. That is a perfect explanation. So Plutonin is guessing that it is an integer. So get people in chat could be, as Plutonin is guessing, the integer, the number of people in chat. It could be that. I would say it depends on the IDE versus you can just hover over. Exactly, yes. So MC Northwood is making a great point. I could hover my mouse over that to find out, but I need to, and that's one of the problems. Is there's an extra step in there where if it's a simple type, if that's an int, I should absolutely just have the word int there. That's only 3 letters, and it would be way better and way obvious what's going on there. Interfactor is an observable collection of complex numbers, and yes, Plutonin, it is an object. But you are code safe should the return type change. So Cryptrix, so I know a lot of people point that out. I actually, as a programmer, if I change a type, I don't mind that I have to update the code because the type changing might have caused a problem and at least makes me look. So that's often the case. But again, as I said, it's a preference thing. So I like to not use the word var in a case like this because I don't have the type on the line. In this case, let me switch this. Oh, if I mouse over this, what's it say? It does say, it is a list of string. So this is what it was. So I was like, oh, I'll have it return the names. But what I love about this example is that could have been names, that could have been a complex person object, that could have been a count of them. There was zero way to know what that was. Now, there might have been some additional context, but what I want people to remember is there's additional computation, like, we already have so many things in our mind as developers. Adding in any extra things to juggle, like trying to figure out what the type is while you're trying to remember the code you're trying to make, that's an extra thing that you now have weighing on your shoulders. So that's my stance, is I say, if you can tell the type, go ahead and use var. So if this said, get names of people in chat, I would be cool with you saying var, right? Because that's pretty clear. Okay, it's getting me back their names, right? It's probably going to be a string. I can guess that. But that's my stance, is try and make it easy for the next programmer. You never know who they'll be. Also, it didn't really do anything. It threw a not implemented exception. So, okay. And yes, Plutonin, the best practice is to make your code easy to read. Perfect explanation. Yes, you hit it exactly, Plutonin. It's not about preference if your language supports implicit conversions. I mean, a lot of these things still, like, there are many things that I think come down to preference. Okay, so we have these two names here, and actually, just for some extra stuff, I am going to duplicate these lines, and that'll be another Brendan and another Crypt. So look at that. We have 4 names in our list of names, and just to confirm that our code still runs, I'm going to run it. We've made some changes. Code still runs. Okay, so here is the deal. I mentioned to you in your for loop that you probably don't want to go from 1 to the number. And here's why. So we said there are 4 items in here. Maybe I want to print out each of these names. So what I can do is this. In order to print out the names, I can say names, and collections in a lot of languages, including C#, you can actually access their values using this syntax right here. And I'm going to pull this out so we can see it a little better. So I'm going to say string name equals that. So I'm declaring a new variable that is of type string and has the name name. And I'm giving it the value of names at index I. So the square braces in this case is a way of accessing data inside a collection, and we access it at a numbered point. So if we think about our code like this, it's a good way of illustrating this. So I'll just put it here in code. So I might say first value, second value, third value, and fourth value. If you think of your code being stored like this, that's how it's stored in memory. So it's in blocks, okay? So if you think the first one, and then the next one's right next to it, so the first value here, and then the next one's right next to it, and then the next one's right here, and then the next one's right there. They're all stored together, one after the next. So after the previous, I should say. And so that's how the data is actually stored in the memory on your computer, which is a really, really nice way of storing things, because it makes it so you can quickly get to any point. Now let me explain how you do that. So we don't see it in C#, but this collection of names is, first off, it's this whole set, right? And obviously, in our collection, this is the order, and these are the values. We have Brendan there, and then we have Crypt, and then we have another Brendan, and then we have another Crypt, right? That's how it's structured in the code. Well, this first one is the first one, and then the second one, third one, etc. Now watch what happens when I run this code. It's going to blow up, by the way. Okay. So here's what happened. If we look at the result, we see Crypt. Wait a minute, we skipped Brendan. Why did we skip Brendan? We'll look at that in a second. Then it says another Brendan, and then another Crypt, And then we get an unhandled exception, argument out of range, index was out of range, and this big explosion of problems. And it says that the error happened on line 19. We can see that right there. And exactly, says Aya, it's because we started at 1. And so this is why I'm showing why, if you're using a for loop, you don't want to start at 1. Let's start it at 0. And do this. And then that's the standard approach for this. So when we do this, we run it like this, we get, oh, now it printed Brendan, crypt, another Brendan, another crypt, perfect. So that's what we wanted to see. It printed out nicely, but why do we have to start our index at 0? Because that means that Brendan is at index 0, which is weird. And just to throw the point in there, just to make it really obvious, I'm going to do this. I'm going to say I, and then we're going to say name. So remember, we've seen this before, but I'm going to point it out again. Using this $ before our string causes string interpolation. And what that means is we're able to insert variables directly into our string here in C#. And then we could print it out like this. So watch what it runs when I do this. So 0 equals Brendan, 1 equals crypt, 2 equals another Brendan, 3 equals another crypt. Okay, so clearly Brendan is at index 0. And 0 is the starting point, making it 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exactly, yes, yep, that's precisely it, Bjornir. And so here's why. I am going to tell you why. We don't have to deal with these in C#, but I want you to know what's going on. So in our underlying data, I told you that this is actually the way it's stored in the memory on our computer. It is in this order. It is in that set exactly like that. So here's what happens. Names has this data in it, and we have essentially what we call a pointer, and I'm not going to explain how they work, but it is to this location in memory, right here, right before the word Brendan. And what it knows how to do is, and I'm not going to get into the intricacies of everything else that's going on, but it knows the basic structure of how big each one of these blocks is. And because it knows how big each one of these blocks is, what it's actually doing is it's saying, if this is, address location, maybe I live at, 555, that's where that is, right? So this is 555 right here. Maybe this is 556, and this is 557. That makes this 558. Okay, so that's the basic concept that's going on here. And so this right here, to get to Brendan, I go to 555 plus 0. Plus 0, keep in mind. If I want to go here, I go to 555 plus 1. If I want this one, I go to 555 plus 2. And if I want this, I go to 555 plus 3. So 558 is just 3 more than that. So that's actually how it's doing it. And that's why these indexes work. It's actually sending me straight to that spot directly. It's not stepping over Brendan and crypt and another Brendan to get to another crypt. It's jumping straight there. So that's what's so cool about this. But that also means that we start our index at 0. So always do starting at 0. First off, so that you can index into arrays the way that we just did, any kind of collection like that, to do this. But also, because of this piece of information, what that means is all programmers are used to the for loop starting at 0. So any experienced developer is going to see your for loop and is basically going to gloss over this. This is such a standard structure. If I started this at 8, half the developers here wouldn't have even have noticed that I'd made a change. They would have just been like, la da 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 da, yep, start at 0, go to that, and would have been like, because we're so conditioned to read that there's a good chance they'd just miss my change. So keep the standard structure, do it like this. If you need to change the value, change it down here. In a lot of cases, it's better to go this way. Okay. Oh, that's awesome, Corbob. Yes. It is really funny when you get ads for things that are, you know, not actually what you want. Crimson Green, hey, welcome. And welcome, Corbob. It's nice to see you here. A couple of things, because I know there are a bunch of new people in here. I do want to make sure I mention these. If you are interested in chatting with any DevChatter people after the stream is over, between streams, anything like that, during stream, there's a Discord that you can check out that is full of programmers who want to talk about, you know, coding stuff. So seriously, check it out. There's about 200 of us in there, and there's usually some good conversations going on related to C# and .NET, as well as some other ones. So check it out. It'll be worth your while. And I am betting someone will probably greet you when you show up there. Takeshi, hey, welcome. Okay, so a couple of things. Also, actually, I should have mentioned this one. If you've missed any of our Learn to Code in C# streams, seriously, take a look at that link that I just posted there in chat. If you go there, you can find our previous videos and find what you've missed in our earlier episodes. Okay, so that's how a for loop works. I hope you guys have a pretty good understanding of that based on this. Now, and Sazaya, thanks for following also. So keep in mind, if you are also one of the more experienced developers here, most of our streams are not this beginner level. They're usually much higher level and more focused on good architecture practices, clean code, and other fun stuff like that. Our streams are usually about 2 to 3 hours, Sazaya. Lucky number 7, hello, good evening. Good afternoon, good evening. Hopefully everybody's having a good day. I know it's evening for you, it's afternoon for me, and it's probably morning for someone in here. Exactly, so Sir Pants-a-Lot-Leet, you are correct. We're now going to show this with an iterator instead of using a counter-controlled loop. So there are fancy words for all these things. So I wrote that code here, and you'll notice I created that, you know, string name for convenience, so I didn't have to use this index and everything. But there's a better way to write this. So here's what I want you to do now. Type the word for each, and after you've typed it in, watch the IntelliSense window that pops up. Again, I want you to choose the second one, and the way you know it's the second one is the second window pops up that says it's a for each statement in C#. So that's how you know you got the right one. And then go ahead and hit Tab. And when you do that, it's going to put in this template here for you. And what you want to do is leave that word var there, and then I want to say name, and then I'm tabbing between these, by the way, and then I want to say names in that one, and I have var name in names. Okay. Before I go on, let me delete our previous code. So that's gone now. And I said for each var name in names. Now I'm down here and I can actually say console.writeLine name. And I'm going to run this and then I'll explain what happens. So it runs this code and you'll notice it printed out all the names again. So this code is much nicer than the for loop we did before. So, why didn't we just use this to begin with? The short answer is, for the code we were writing, this is the better thing to do. This is what we want to write, in most cases. Essentially all this does, and I'm going to change that to string, is it says for each item in a collection that we have here, and first off, I will tell you in these, so I will warn you guys, in my Learn to Code series, I will lie to you ever so slightly, in nice ways. There are some things that in these beginner series I'm not going to tell you the truth about. I am going to tell you things that are kind of close to the truth, and get you just far enough. In our regular streams, I tell them the truth. And the reason for that is that, man, I wish I need a button now that says, you can't handle the truth. Anyway, The reason is the complexity doesn't matter, and in the 99% case you're going to use it like this, and I want you to learn how to use it, not exactly how it works. Exactly, Corbob. Everything is done with magic. And lucky number 7, yes, I almost always use link and lambda expressions. Yes, I am a politician programmer. Auto-magically. Okay, so we went through this with a for each loop, and I said that we can just run this and it works this way. So it's grabbing each item and printing it out. So that's literally all it does for the loop. Grabs the first item, runs it, grabs the second item, runs the code again, grabs the third item, runs the code again, grabs the fourth item, and runs the code again. Pretty nice. I had no chance of having that overflow error that we had last time when we, went beyond the end of the thing. And everything works just fine. I could add new items to this. So I could do this. And, I could say, someone said lambda? So we'll just type in the word lambda. Now when I run this, congratulations, the code works just fine. It can add this in as many times as we want. So I could write in the word lambda a whole bunch, come down here, run the code, and boom, it prints out lambda a whole bunch. So however many items I've got in there, that's how many times it runs. So that's pretty darn cool. And every time it automatically inserts the item into this variable for me. So pretty darn neat. Love for each loops. They're in most programming languages. C# of course has one. But the last loop that we were asked to talk about on today's stream, which I will also mention, is called the while loop. Now the while loop is not as nice as these ones. The while loop, we're going to type in the word while, and again, I'm going to choose the second one, and I know it's the second one because it pops out the second window that says C# on it. So while loop C#. Then I'm going to hit tab, and that makes our while loop. I didn't really need the template for this one. I just want to show you that to make sure that you always choose the right template when you are programming. So it says while true. Okay, cool. Let's try it. So we'll say console.writeLine. We love coding! Exclamation point. All right, let's go ahead and run this. It's gonna work great. Oh, and that is a great question in the chat. Yeah, this is gonna run for a while, so I can scroll. It's going. I don't know if you guys can see. I can't actually catch up anymore because I'm trying to grab the little scroll thingy. I don't know if you guys can spot it popping up there, but oh, I got down to the bottom. Okay, if you ever get caught in an infinite loop, go ahead and hit Control and C. The same thing you do for like copying and pasting. And that will actually try to remember it as cancel, so Control C, so C for cancel. And that will cancel your program so that it doesn't keep running forever and eventually crash. That's called an infinite loop. You can make those really easy with a while loop, because I just did while true. But I'll explain how we actually want to use that in a moment. But let me answer the quick question that I saw in chat, which is why am I in VS Code instead of Visual Studio? Well, Visual Studio is actually running back here. I use this program most of the time. This is actually what I regularly use. But specifically for our Learn to Code streams, Visual Studio Code has fewer things going on. So you'll notice in this program I've got a whole bunch of extra menus. I mean, I've got like tabs coming out the wazoo, like all over the place, various different windows. And this is like a 15 gig install or something like that. So if we asked a beginner, hey, go ahead and install Visual Studio, we'd be telling them to install like 15 gigs worth of things where they have options along the way of what they want to install. I think that's a pretty big barrier. With VS Code, is it 25 gig? Whatever. So I think it depends on how much stuff you install, Plutonin. But the idea is there's a lot of steps. For VS Code, basic installer and they're done. It's just a next, and they can run this. So anyone that wants to learn more after some beginner stuff, yeah, I would recommend they install Visual Studio, and there's a lot of cool stuff they can do. And we're using .NET Core, and Visual Studio Code does well for this, so that's the quick reason why. Yeah, no problem. As I said, it was a great question. One that I love to answer. And exactly as Corbob says, VS Code also runs on Mac OS and Linux, so it's not just here on Windows. Okay, so we did while true. That's not what we want to do. As you can probably guess, inside of these parentheses, we're supposed to put something that can evaluate to true or false. Doesn't matter what it is. So we could say, I is less than names.count. I didn't define I yet. So what I'm going to do is this. Int I equals 0. And actually, I'm going to run it like this first. So I created a variable called I, set its value to 0, and I say, well, I is less than names.count. And names.count is the number of items inside the names collection. Now I'm going to run this code, and it's going to run forever again. So we're caught in this infinite loop one more time like we were before. So I'm going to hold Control and hit C. Now, you probably figured out that I was about to do the thing that prevented the infinite loop, but I stopped there. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say I++, and then a semicolon. So you'll remember I talked about earlier in the stream that I++, so anything plus plus, is increasing the value of that item by 1. So this is our for loop again. I wrote our for loop right here. All I said was we love coding, but I could do this. Instead of saying we love coding, I could say names and say I. Just like we did with our for loop, I can actually recreate the exact same structure with a while loop. So it prints out all of our values up from the top just like we did before. And then says we left the loop. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is the while loop can work however you want it to, because this is just a while and then some value. The for loop is a little different because it gave you this structure, right? It gave you this structure that you had to follow. And you can follow it if you like. And as I mentioned, you can deviate from it, but for our purposes, just pretend that this is how it works. And then that's what you get. So that's the for loop, the while loop, and the for each loop. We've covered these once before on the stream, but I do want to make sure I drive this one home because I don't care how much programming you do in C#. All of us have to use these. So you're going to run into this. You need to know this. So get used to using loops and don't be afraid of them. Okay, so here we did this trick with these names, right? I want to do something else. Plutonin, you actually want to see a do while? I'll show you a do while. So Plutonin requested the other type of loop that does not get as much attention, but we absolutely love it here. The do while loop. Here's how it works. And Yin Yang Do, welcome. Thank you for the Twitch Prime subscription. Can we get some DevChatter hype emotes spammed in chat there, please, for our new subscriber? Just got an egg there. So, expanding the clan of dinosaurs here. Okay, so a do-while loop is the one that we want to show. Yeah, much appreciated. And now you get a DevChatter hype emote with a nice dinosaur that can hold up his hype sign. So, the do-while loop. So for this one, go ahead and type the word do, and again, choose the template here that says it's for C#. It's going to say do, while, loop, C#. Hit tab, and you get this, which is a strange structure. So this one's a weird one. And it says do, and it says while, and our condition, you'll notice, is after the loop. So that's a weird thing. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I want this to do something a little differently. What if you have other conditions? So if you have more than one condition, we could do this. For example, I could say, maybe I only want to allow do this. Int name limit equals 5. I'll show you multiple limits here in a second. Oh, am I dropping frames? If I'm dropping frames, not many of them, I don't think. Hopefully it's done. Let me know if it's still a problem, Plutonin, though. Here's what I'm going to do. I want to say console.readLine. So I was doing WriteLine, and as you probably figured out, that writes text out to the console window, but I want to do a readLine here, and this is going to do things a little bit differently. We're going to go ahead and say string, well, actually, let's just do this. I'm going to say names.add. Oh, I don't want to do that. Name to add. String, and I'm actually going to show you something here. Name to add. So you will all see something neat here. So I'm going to say name to add Okay, so here's the neat thing. I have a red squiggly here. It says name to add does not exist in the current context. Okay, I've explained this concept a little bit, but I want to cover it a little further. These curly braces that we've had, in the beginning of the stream, I called this a code block. And these curly braces define the lifetime of variables. So this variable I created, string name to add, whenever you reach an end curly brace, all the variables that were declared inside of that code block are no longer accessible. So this name to add variable essentially dies right when it gets to this, and we don't have it anymore. We cannot get to this. So that's why that doesn't work. So what I need to do is this. I need to take this, I copied the first part, and I'm going to paste it up here above the do while loop. Now remember, I told you when you reach the end curly brace, all the ones declared in that code block die. Well, this one is defined inside of this code block, which doesn't die until here. So my name to add can be used from here down to there. Any of that code, which includes the while loop. So because the while in a do while comes after the curly brace, any variable you're going to depend on needs to come before it. Okay, so what I did here was I said, read the text from the console. So me, the user, is going to type something in down here, in this lower portion, you know, down here, see, this code here. We're going to type over there, so, and then that is going to get added to our collection, and then we're going to be able to print it out. Now I said while name does not equal empty string, so that's quote quote. So if I don't type anything and I just hit enter, DolkaleX007, welcome, thanks for following. If I just hit enter, the string we're going to get back from console readLine is an empty string, and it's going to be this one, and then we will leave the loop. So let's see that in action. And actually, before we do that, I want to give instructions every time. So we're going to say console WriteLine. Please enter another a name. So we're going to say please enter a name. If I enter a space, that will be accepted. Yeah, I could use. Okay, all right, we'll do it. Yeah. Bucket number 7, yeah. So technically we can do this. Whoops, yeah, name to add. Okay, this is actually not quite right yet. Okay, but isn't there a name to add variable all the time empty? Yeah, on line 16 we change it, Plutonin. And so lucky number 7 actually pointed out the exact thing that we should be using. which is that we should be doing string.isNull or whitespace. Now, as I mentioned, this code's not perfect yet. I need to do something for it first. So this says, while the string is null or whitespace. Wait a minute. Is null or whitespace? No. We want the opposite. We want when it's not null or whitespace. So what we can actually do in C# is whenever we get something that's either true or false, and this is going to evaluate to either true or false, we want to use an exclamation point before it. And that means not. Okay? So that says when it's not is null or whitespace. Okay, so that means... Okay, hang on. Let's run this code and just see what happens. So one of the best things to do is just run code and just see what happens. So we're going to say, Brendan, please enter a name. I see Matt in there. I see Starmy. Oh, thanks for following, Starmy. And I will catch up on chat in a second, everybody. And I'll say another. So now I've said 4 names, and I hit enter. And look, it printed out Brendan, Matt, Starmy, and another. So it printed out the values that I told it. So I think that's pretty neat. So if you are following along and writing this code, congratulations, you just did a program that takes user input and does something with it. So that is always a fun thing. Let me catch up on chat. Starmy, if I type in a space, that space will be accepted and it will just be one of the names. The Blue Printer. You want to say thank you for this series. You're new to programming. It's helped me a bunch. You're currently following your lessons. Oh, that's awesome, the Blue Printer. I'm glad you're enjoying the stream, and I apologize about the timing. Yes, it's weird when you deal with the whole world, because I know that, like, for me it's the middle of the afternoon, and for some people, like, I know Lucky Number 7 and S&B, it's in the evening right now that I usually stream. And we have a couple of people that catch our videos on the VODs and are based in Australia, and I know we've got someone in South Korea that's often here, and so it's like, oh, you're here at like 3 a.m. Cool. So yeah, exactly, Starmy. We get people in from all over the place. So yeah, Norway. So we've got a whole bunch of things. And oh yeah, see, it's about noon there for Kenso Dev. So welcome everybody. If you haven't hit the follow button, do, because it really does help us out. And you'll be able to catch our future streams. One of the other things I do want to mention for all of you is if you do want to chat with more of us after the fact, you should seriously check out our Discord. There are a whole bunch of us in there that you can chat with. And then one other thing I want to mention, if you are wanting to catch our old videos, so you are one of the people that can't catch us live, take a look at our videos on YouTube. So that's where our archive of all of our older videos are. So hello everybody, welcome. Nice to see a whole bunch of friendly faces here, as that's what we like here in DevChatter, is a lot of happy devs helping each other out. Okay, one other thing I wanted to mention, if you are wanting to catch us live, and you live in some strange foreign place, like, California, for example, that's our schedule for anyone that lives in California. Or if you live in Norway, you can actually type into our chat !schedule Norway, and it will tell you what our schedule is for anyone that lives in Norway. And it'll put it in your correct time zone and all the information like that. So our streams are normally on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. We normally only do 1 stream a week that's at the beginner level. However, our other streams are usually at a higher level and are for professional developers who are just wanting to learn new stuff and see cool things in code. The Blue Printer, yes, all of our Twitch streams do eventually get to YouTube, but the YouTube is on a couple of week delay. Oh, Dokalex, yes, we do much more advanced stuff in object-oriented programming. We do web dev. I will eventually get the Learn to Code streams into doing some kind of GUI programming. We've done a small amount of web programming here. And that is something that we will definitely be doing more of for the Learn to Code, but normally our streams are also at that higher level and we're doing more advanced stuff. So on Saturday we did a stream where we focused entirely on one of the principles of object-oriented programming. So... okay, Hey, that's funny, Crypto BG. Yeah, I could have guessed what that BG stood for. It's not bodyguard, it's Bulgaria. Okay, so someone asked a question a while back. They said, what if I want to have my loop depend on two conditions? So this first condition is string is null or white space. In C#, we can do something special. We could say and. And in order to say and, we use this double ampersand. And what we're going to do is I'm going to say name limit is greater than 0. Whoops. So name limit greater than 0. So what I'm going to do, and actually I'm going to rename this. Instead of calling it name limit, I'm going to say names left. And what we're going to do is we are going to say names left minus minus. So every time we add a name to the list, yes, lucky number 7, I will mention that it's going to be more relevant to our regular viewers than the beginners, but I will mention it. So names left minus minus. So I told you before that if I say variable plus plus, so I plus plus, or you know, count plus plus, or see, I have I plus plus right there. What that does is that adds 1 to the value, so it increases the value of I by 1. If I do minus minus, that decreases the value by 1. So essentially, if I started at 5 and I run minus minus, the value is now 4. And then the next time I run it, it's 3. And then 2, and then 1, and then 0. And so since I did that, we are limited to technically 6 names. 5 names, because we're going to remove one the first time through. Yeah, so as Sir Pancelot mentioned, C++ is a is almost a joke within a name of a programming language. They were making a fun in-joke for other developers, because like they're kind of like, haha, look, we incremented C, because there's a programming language called C, and they're like, we're slightly better than C, is kind of the gag there. So it's very clever. Okay, so as lucky number 7 mentioned, so this let's run this code. So I can say there's a name, 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 and then it kicked me out, right? And so the reason it kicked me out is not because I hit enter. So the previous time that we'd run this, I hit enter and left an empty line, and we left because of this condition here. And that's what pulled us out of the loop. This time we left because, so this was true, so we said true and false. Well, an AND statement, which is what the AND expression, which is what these two ampersands do, is they say this needs to, both of these need to be true in order for this statement to remain true. If either one is false, then it's false. And that's what an AND does. So true and true equals true. True and false equals false. And by that same token, false and true equals false. False and false equals false. So this is how the Boolean logic here works. Yes, Ammo, we can short circuit in C#. There's a break statement for that. So I could have done this. So break is a keyword that will short circuit. So there's your C# quick answer there. We're not explaining that one right now. So if you don't know what I was talking about, then don't worry about it. As I'll tell you all the time in the beginner stuff, if I say something that's confusing, feel free to ask about it. If it's something that I don't think you should worry yet if you're one of the beginners, then I will make sure I mention right after. I will tell you, this isn't something to worry about. But everything else that I say, if you didn't understand what I said, feel free to chime in chat and ask for clarification, and I will explain. Okay. So true and true equals true, true and false equals false. So the idea here is that these values need to be they need to both be true in order for this to work. And some people are mentioning in chat that there's also OR, and OR is the other way that we can do it. And with an OR, so for OR we use two pipes. The vertical bars, whatever you want to call them, they are, at least on a US keyboard, they're the straight line that is above the backslash. So above it, the enter key usually is where we have that. So it's this key, like that. SNB put it in chat also. That's what we use for OR. And an OR works a little bit differently than an AND. So the OR is if either one is true, it's true. So if I change these words from ANDs to ORs and rewrite what this is, we then say true and true. So true or true is true, true or false is true, false or true is true, false or false is false. So that's how this works. No, I meant short circuit as in within your AND condition, put the most oh, yes. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that is exactly how it works. In C#, once it finds a false, it leaves. It does not do all the conditions. So, yep, that is exactly correct. If you use it evaluates both. If you use that, it fails fast. So lucky number 7 is correct. That's because the single ampersand is actually doing a different thing. So there's a short circuit built into the AND expression, and that's what everybody's talking about in there. If you want one and not both, you have to use Zor. Exactly, Zoroboros. Let's see. Stream lag 2 times frame drop, I think. Okay, well, we might have a little bit of lag sometimes, hopefully not much. Cash Money, CS, you mean C# as in the file extension, or what do you mean by CS? I would love to answer your question. If there are 3, the idea is that if any of them, so true or false, for example, is still true. And then if you did true and true and true, they all have to be true. You mean the programming language. So C# is actually good for all kinds of things. It's a general purpose programming language. You can do application development, web development, you can do mobile development, you can do game development. There are people, so yes, Cash Money, it'd be like Java. So it's a, C# is not, I wouldn't call either of those low level. They're fairly high level programming languages that can be used to build a lot of applications. So they're generally used for application development. So think, programs running on computers, web applications running on servers, things like that. And there's a lot of similarity between Java and C#. So, yep. Okay, so lucky number 7 has been pointing out something really interesting that I do want to talk about. There is a special operator, and I will mention this really quickly, that is a single ampersand, and it's not what you think it is. So it really does exist. So if you tried to do an AND and you forget this, watch what happens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it prints out, hey, that did everything we expected, didn't it? No difference, right? I can just use the ampersand instead of the double ampersand. Well, not exactly. There actually is a difference. Kazru, hello, welcome. You have no clue, have no clue? Anyway, you got accepted on the First School project. Oh, that's awesome. I always like getting to program fun projects in groups. It's always a blast. Okay, so here's the interesting thing. So I printed that out. I want to show you all something really quickly. We're going to do this. Return. Just ignore that I did that. I'm going to make my program run a little differently. I'm going to say console.writeLine. And I'm going to say true and false. Okay. So when I run this, you'll see that it prints out false every time, right? Because I said that, you know, they both have to be true. So let's make this first one true, and then we'll flip this one, so it'll be false and true, and then we'll do false and false. And we talked about those. We know basically how they work. So when I run that, it should print out true, false, false, false. Someone else had asked, can we do a third one? And the answer is yes. If we add a third one, it does what we expect. We don't stream every day. We stream actually 4 days a week, so it's Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays we stream for 2 to 3 hours usually on each stream. So we run this code and it works just fine. Now, let me show you the difference. So it's hard to illustrate the short-circuiting without writing some more complicated code, but I can run this. Watch what happens. We get the same result. So you might be asking, Brendan, why didn't you use the why did you use the double ampersand instead of the single? Well, the double ampersand is actually an AND operator. The single ampersand, what we have here now, is actually a different command. And I will show you what I mean. I can do 8 and 12. And I don't know what the result of that's going to be, because I didn't do the math. It's 8, because they both have an 8 in them. That's true. That's funny. Oh, I didn't think about that. Okay, so I could do 12 and 13. And that's going to be 12. Whoop. Oh, right, because it's only checking that. Oh, that's so funny. Because it evaluated to a Boolean, because there was that value in there. That's so funny. Oh, man. So, this is the weird part. So what am I doing? Can I get away with this? No, okay, it won't let me get away with that. Let's shorten these numbers up a little bit. Okay, so when you run this code with the single ampersand, it's not actually doing a Boolean comparison. Like, it's not really doing a true-false comparison, like what this is. So notice, these numbers, I cannot even use the double ampersand with them. This isn't valid. But this is. So the reason why is this is doing what's called a bitwise operation. And I'm not going to... You don't need to understand how these work in order to program, but it's an interesting concept. It's useful to know how they work, and there's cool stuff you can do if you know how they work, but you can get a lot of you can do a lot of stuff in programming before getting to this point. So the number 8, so what, that's 0, so that's, so there's the number 8, and the number 12 is going to be 1100. So if I were to write these in binary, so remember your computer's storing these numbers in binary every time that you do anything, this is what these numbers are. And realistically, this is actually, there's, you know, and then to be honest, it's really, whoops. So the number 8, technically, it's storing that. Okay, and then the number 12 is storing this. So when I write these, what it is actually doing when I use the ampersand operator here, so specifically that line, we're going to ignore these other ones, is it is actually going through and it is looking a column at a time, and it, and it is saying, for these, right here, it's ANDing these, and then it's going to AND these values, and it's going to AND these values. So what we end up with is we say anytime there are both ones, so these are our trues right here, it passes it down. So that means the resulting value, I'm going to put it down on this lower line here, is written right here. Now let me get rid of these padding zeros at the beginning because they just make things confusing. So we're going to get rid of that because we don't need it. They're all zeros. We know they're going to be zeros no matter what. It was 0 all the way. So because we use this, so this is actually called a bitwise operator, and that means that it works on the bits. So this is actually doing an AND across the bits. So 0 and 0 is 0, 0 and 0 is 0, 0 and 1 is 0, and 1 and 1 is 1. So remember that true and true stays true. That's the only one that does. So the only ones we keep are the ones where they both have it. So for example, if instead of 8 and 12, we did 9 and 13, the result we would get is 9. So, should get, assuming I didn't typo this. So we get back 9. And the reason is that this is the number 9, and this is the number 13, so we get back the same thing as the number 9. It's really kind of weird. And so because of the fact that this is actually just an operator that's performing an operation on the numbers, when we use this in our loop down here as we did, what actually happens is, for a Boolean value, the result true and false, those work just fine. Oh, and yeah, so, someone wanted to see 9 and 12. If we do 9 and 12, we should get back 8. So we get back 8. Exactly. As Plutonin said, 1 and 1 is true, 1 and 0 is false, 0 and 0 is false, and 0 and 1 is false. So, yep, that's how it works. So there you go. If you are following along, as Ron or Ronald, I'm guessing there, mentioned in the chat, feel free to try out other stuff and see what happens. It's really kind of neat. So, alright, so I just wanted to get that there to show you all what was happening. And then that's why, so the way that this works is, oh, well, that's funny, Yin Yang Do. Yin Yang Do had not even followed yet, but thank you for the subscribe earlier, and thank you now also for following. Much appreciated. So I'm going to put the second AND back here, because this is actually an AND operator, whereas the other one's just a convenience of the math. So that's really a math operation, but it can be used like that. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Let's run this code again. Kazru, there are actually a lot of cases where they're useful that I can talk about. I'll do that on another stream. Let's not do that one today. So make a note to ask me later. And yeah, as SNB says, bit flags is one way that it's good. But then you got to get into why would you need bit flags versus doing just individual booleans, and then again more explanation. So don't want to jump into that right now. So we're gonna say Brendan. We're gonna say smart ASCII. Also, hi smart ASCII. I saw you say hello. And yes, McCullen, hello. And we were doing bitwise stuff. Let's see. Kazru, who else is in here? S&B, anybody else in here? Oh, Ron. There we go. And our loop runs, so cool. Yes, Horkrine. There's some weirdness with that, that we could get into. So that's kind of cool. We can ask our code a couple of questions. We have a limit on the number of names we can type in. The code asks us this. So let's explain how this do-while loop works. Yes, actually it's called an invisibility cloak. Duh. Come on, smart ASCII, you should know better. Because the cup makes me invisible too. It's like an invisibility cloak from like Harry Potter. Ron, yes. So on our regular streams, we're doing ASP.NET Core. For anyone who is here, yeah, you like that? It was funny. I was choosing a cup to drink from today. I was like, you know what? I'm going to drink from a green cup. That'll be fun. Okay, so what I was saying is on our regular streams, so if you show back up to our normal streams, which you can check our schedule by saying schedule in the place that you live, in chat, so exclamation point schedule, and then put in a place and it will come back with our schedule for you. We usually stream on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. We do a lot of stuff that is it's usually ASP.NET Core programming, but ooh, schedule at Hogwarts, that's a good idea. So, okay, and I saw someone follow. Welcome, thanks for following, by the way. Kansas City won't work unless you put it in quotes. So if it's 2 words, you gotta put quotes around it. Okay, so the do while loop that someone wanted us to explain. So here is, I forget who asked, and I apologize for forgetting who asked us to do this one. Schedule air quotes. Thanks, Smartasky. The do while loop. So it does something special. So notice this code ran and then it does the while check. So I think that makes sense, but let's run it. So it's gonna ask me my name, and then I'm gonna hit enter, and it's gonna skip out of this. Now what happened is I ran this one time, and the value I put in here is it actually did add an empty entry in here. So our code's not quite perfect, but it works well for an example. What we did is we came in here, we executed this code once, and then we did the check to see if we should execute it again. And because we said we should exit, no, Smartasky, we have not been debugging yet. That will probably be in the next stream. So the do while loop runs once. What if I did this? And false. Or actually, I could just say while false. So while false, this loop is going to end immediately. I mean, it was going to no matter what, but I just did this, and I can say Brendan, and then it exited out. So what's interesting about the do while loop is it runs one time and then does its check. Whereas a while loop, if I were to just say while false, whoops, while false, console.writeLine will never run. Okay? Console.writeLine will never run. And then I save and I come down here and I try to run that, and I can, again, put in a name, and you'll notice it did not print out the code that says will never run, because, as I said, that code never runs. So what's weird about this is the do while loop runs once, then checks. This one checks before running. So if you need to run the code once no matter what, that's the one you want to use. So its common use is for things like this, where you want to ask someone something and then see, do I want to continue? Do I want to keep going? Do I want to do this again? So that's the way a while loop works. Or a do while loop works, excuse me. Let me catch up on chat, because I saw a few things that come in there that weren't just people messing with the schedule command and trying to do crazy stuff like checking if it, if we had a schedule for Mordor and Venus and whatnot. If you put the names left at the top, if you put the names left minus at the top, will it loop extra time? No, Starmy. So Starmy's wondering if I put this up here, I think, and that will make no difference. And the reason why is because it's before we get to the while. Well, actually, I should put the while back before I do that, shouldn't I? Hang on, Control-Z. There we go. So, wondering if I put that up there, is it going to make a difference? And the answer is no. It doesn't matter because it's still before we check. So, but I'm going to remove the names left. We don't need to limit the number of names. Okay. What else do we have in chat? do while will complete the operation at least once, whereas a for each can have 0 elements and never run. Exactly, Horkrine. For each, a while, a for loop can all run 0 times. No matter what, a do while loop will always run at least once. So that's one of the big differences. An example would be for a login. So probably not in a login page, Plutonin, because we don't loop there. Pages, like web pages, work a little differently. But if we were to, so there are things. So when you're asking for input inside of a console application, a do while loop actually makes a lot of sense. Oh, so you mean in like a Windows application. Again, in there, they still work a little bit differently, but if you're in a console application, it makes sense here. And there are some other cases, too, where it makes sense. But giving you an example from a console application, I might do this. So, I might say, I could do something along the lines of make sure that it's valid. I could say, please enter a valid name, and I could say, like, you know, if name contains numbers, be like, no, we want a valid name, right? Now, obviously, I understand that legally a person could probably have numbers in their name. I don't know, it depends on what country you're in, but anyway, the point being that we might check validity or something like that and ask them to try again. And so if you want to be able to try again, a do while loop is good for that. Yep, we've been going for just over 2 hours there, little waffle. Horkrine, turns out a for loop will run at least twice as fast as a for each, as a for loop uses its own iterator, whereas the for each invokes the IEnumerable enumerator to iterate over a collection. Horkrine, that actually does make sense, but it's probably complicated for a number of our viewers. Okay, so any other questions or things that people want to see about these loops? Other stuff related to these types of data that we're doing that you guys want to see us do here? Oh, so we did the do while loop. We currently have a while loop here, but actually I like the for each loop here just because it's nicer code. It's easier to read. So I want to say for each string name in names. And I'm going to come down here and I am going to console.writeLine, whoops, writeLine name. We're going to get rid of that because I like this better. It looks nicer. And then when I run it, I can say, Brendan, please enter a name. I won't enter the next one. So there we go, prints that. Did you cover the, so Smart ASCII, I did not explain the difference, and in C#, interestingly, so unless you are using those intentionally for that, the funny thing is you don't even actually get control over it because C# will automatically adjust the difference for them in the compiler, but I did talk about what they did. Plutonin, not quite. There's a little bit of extra complexity that Smart ASCII's talking about. So basically, Smart ASCII, if you don't use the value, C# will correct for you to choose the faster one. And it will actually give you the post instead of the pre, because the post is slightly faster, as I recall. Yeah, so that's what I'm talking about, Horkrine, except that in a for loop, C# actually will will use the correct one for you, even if you use the wrong one. So, for example, here's what, I'll show you what he's talking about. So our code runs. So let's talk about it. So I'm going to return here. When I type in this return here, this is disabling all code after the statement. Just so you all know what I'm doing there, whenever I put that word return there, essentially I have killed all the code after that point. None of it runs anymore. That's basically just a little cheating trick that I'm doing to do some extra code for all of you. They seem like they do the same thing. Horkrine, they're not actually the difference, and I will inside a for loop, they're going to do the same thing, and that's why C# can correct you on it if you use the wrong one. And Andrea New, hello. From the United States. I hope the weather is nice in Italy. It's pretty nice here right now. It's a little warm. I would not want to be sans air conditioning right now in the US, but okay. Yeah, see, too hot there too. Yeah, it's a little warm for everybody. Okay, so here's the deal. I'm going to do a for loop, and we're going to say we're going to go up to 10, and I'm going to do a console.writeLine, and I'm going to pass in I. So what we're going to do is we're just going to look at the value that we get back when we run this. So it prints out the numbers 0 through 9, as you expect. And what SmartASCII's asking about is, so this is I++. If we instead did ++I, does it do the same thing? And the short answer is yes, it does the same thing. We again still get 0 through 9. Well, we could write this differently. We could also say I plus equals 1. Now this is a special operator. Horkrine, yeah, you said it, but SmartASCII asked us first, didn't he? I think SmartASCII asked us first. SmartASCII already covered the prefix and postfix operation. Mastodonton, no! You can use Windows, you can use Linux, you can use Mac OS. So you will need to be on one of those, and you can run VS Code. The setup instructions are, you can watch the beginning of this video to get the setup instructions. They're also right there. I just linked to them in the chat, and that will get you set up running the code. Okay, so here's the deal. So this operation has to run every time, and that's how it increments the loop. I could pull this out of here. I don't need it up there. I could put it right here, and it will do the same thing. Actually, I'm going to put it right here, and it will do the same thing. So let's watch. 0 through 9 should print out. So when I run that, it says 0 through 9, exactly as we were doing before. Tram Pam Pam, I can answer a lot of questions related to C# if people have them. So you'll notice I just changed the structure of my for loop, and I put this right here. But we didn't ask about plus equals 1. We asked about I++. So I'm going to put that code back in. So this is what was there, and I've now just pulled I++ down inside to the end of our method. So, yeah, I know, I'm going to get that later. VS Code's yelling at me to download something new. I'm going to get to it eventually, but I don't want to do it because we're streaming. Thanks, VS Code, get out of my face. Okay, so I can run that code and it works fine. Let me do this. So remember, we're printing out 0 through 9. So somewhere in this loop, I have to say I++. So I'm going to do that right there. And then I'm going to say .NET run, and hey look, 0 through 9. So I can put that code wherever I want, and it still increments it. So the neat thing here is this value is returning I when I run this. So I++ somehow returns I because I was able to print it. So that's kind of neat. Let me now show you the difference. ++I. Whoa, 1 through 10? We were doing 0 through 9. What just happened? Magic. Okay, so here is the difference. All right. So when I do ++I, this changes the value, returns new value. So this went from 0 to 1 and then returned back the 1. Let me duplicate this line and go right there. So now I'm going to write I++. Now this one returns the value, then changes the value. So this will return I and then increment by 1, whereas this one will increment by 1 and then return I. So that's actually the difference between I++ and ++I. So when I run this, this now is back to 0 through 9, exactly as we expect. Draco, I is just a variable name, it could be anything. Is the int always I? Can you put, yes, Draco, you can put in whatever you want inside the for loop. So, I can call that number and it works exactly the same. So whatever the variable is that you want, you are welcome to do that. And I've seen some people following. Thank you everybody for the follows. I apologize I didn't get to your names. I didn't see them pop up because I was trying to focus on stuff. But I will obviously thank you when I get the chance. Okay, so that's actually the way that it works. Now remember, in our for loop, we did number plus plus. But why is it printing a 10? It's only printing the 10 when I do this one. Whoops. Sorry. So when I do plus plus number, it's printing 10 because the first time through the loop it says 0, but it increments it to 1 and then gives us the number. When we get to 10, we're actually, so number is equal to 9, which is less than 10. So we come into the loop, and then we increment it to 10, returning the value, and that gets printed out. So 10 gets printed, then we go to start the loop again, and we check and we say, oh, we're at 10, okay, don't run it again. And so the idea is, because we did the increment to get it to 10, which is when we would leave the loop, that's actually what happens. It's before we do the check to see whether we should leave the loop. So that's actually how that works. But as I was pointing out to SmartASCII, the cool thing is, if you write number plus plus right here, again it's going to do 0 through 9, and if I change this instead to plus plus, whoops, plus plus number, and run the code, it's going to be the exact same code. Now the reason why is that we're doing this here and not using the value. So since we don't use the returned value of number plus plus or plus plus number, it doesn't matter. So what's cool about that is that because the number didn't matter, and it didn't matter whether we used plus plus number or number plus plus, C# actually comes in and optimizes that for you. So it didn't actually matter which one you picked. It changed the code, and I believe it always does the post one. So I believe it always does number plus plus. I forget the reason, but in the very low level things going on in your code, that's actually very slightly faster. And because sometimes loops could go to very large numbers, they want to make sure that that operator that, could happen, what is this? 10 million times. Because you could do this 10 million times, it wants to make sure that you, run really fast. It does not want to slow you down. So that's why it does it that way. Also, pro tip for anybody that doesn't know, in C# number literals, like this one here, this 10 million, you can actually put underscores in there, and that's totally valid. So just to make it a little simpler, we'll go to 10,000, and we'll print out the first 10,000 numbers. This is actually going to take a moment, but see, totally valid to have underscores in there. You can put them wherever you want. I'd recommend you put them in the thousands place, because that makes it a little easier to read, because most cultures structure their language with either a comma or a dot or something at that spot in order to denote the thousands place. Okay, let me catch up on chat. So for some examples, let's say I'm making a game. When you would use a for loop, you can give me an example. So Draco, you might use a for loop for, say, like, I want to print out all the items in your inventory space. So we might say you have 10 inventory slots. You might want to print all the empty spaces, even if there's not an item in there, for example. There are other situations like that. It depends on how you're coding it, but there are definitely cases. It's hard to get into the details of exactly when. And hey, Mage, welcome. I saw you show up. Sorry, yes, a little complicated for a beginner. Yeah, sorry about that, Andrea. Yeah, so like I don't know who is a beginner and who knows programming pretty well already in here, but I try to keep things as simple as I can when we're in our Learn to Code episode. So if you didn't know, today is one of our special episodes. It's part of our Learn to Code series that we do here on the channel. I linked to some information about that there, but we like to every once in a while do a stream that is intended for beginners, and you can keep your eye out for those. If you actually go to that link it will take you to this page, and you can get reminders just about our Learn to Code in C# series. So if you do feel intimidated by showing up to one of DevChatter's regular episodes, first off, I'd tell you, try not to feel intimidated. You are perfectly welcome to show up even if you are a beginner, and feel free to ask questions, follow along, anything like that. But if you are intimidated and just want to show up to our beginner episodes, you're welcome to just click the Remind Me on this, and it will tell you about those. But if you want to catch all of our episodes, make sure to click the follow button. Okay, so that works pretty nicely. And I love that I got to show you guys that you can put underscores in your numbers to make them a little easier to read. Because that's actually a pretty cool thing. Why is this yelling at me? Oh, right, unreachable code, because I left that in there. Whoop. All right, learn the code dev. What else do we want to mention? Oh, and if anybody showed up late, instructions for doing the setup are right there. And if you missed part of this episode, they are all recorded. So one other thing I do want to mention here, if you follow that link to go to the Learn to Code, you'll see there's a watch video for each of our episodes, and we're currently live on episode 7. So you can actually check out all of those, and that's a nice, easy way to get that information. And as Retro Bear is pointing out, a lot of the commands that our bot uses, you all have access to as well. Yes, our T-Rex teaches students how to write code. Actually, that's a good point. Is hype running? Do I have that up? I don't know if I have that up. Nope, I don't. Sorry, guys, I don't have hype. I don't have hype up right now. All right, I think it is now. There we go. So you all do actually have access to our hype command, which does this craziness right here, and covers the screen in hype. But I often keep it disabled, so. Oh yeah, so Mage, moderators, and me, we override cooldowns. Cooldowns don't apply to us. There's no such thing as a cooldown as far as we're concerned. Which makes sense. If a moderator or I wants to use a command, the bot will not restrict us from using it. Yes, I trust the mods to not spam the hype emote, or the hype crazy thing. So yes. Oh, and for anyone that is wondering, that craziness that we put on the screen, we did build that in our regular stream. That is actually all written in HTML5 and JavaScript on a canvas. So we're actually just controlling images that you know, spread around there. There's a lot of actually interesting things we can do with that. And actually, I'm going to hide the overlay before people abuse it. Why do Java programmers wear glasses? Because they don't see sharp. Ba-dum-ching. Actually, tram-pam-pam, I wear my glasses so that I can see sharp. Alright, I'm going home now. Sorry about that, everybody. Just as a heads up, it looks like your camera's auto exposure setting throws off your chroma key when it adjusts, when your hands gets close. Yeah, something like that, smartassky. I wish I could fix that a little bit better. There's a bunch of setups I need to fix with my web camera and lights and everything, but yeah. Alright, okay, so I'm probably going to call that the end of our, whoa, I'm not seeing sharp right now. I'm going to call that the end of our Learn to Code section, but if you all want to ask me questions about C# or anything like that, I would be glad to still answer them for a little bit. Let me know if you do have any questions. Oh, and for anyone that is wondering, I am waiting on my, so I set up a, some DevChatter mugs, and I ordered one, and mine has not arrived yet, which is disappointing. But the mug actually is going to have the little green dinosaur on it, so that's going to be interesting when I pick up a mug that's got green on it, and it's suddenly going to be clear, you know, because like this, I've got that same problem. That, you know, you see through me when I pick up the cup. You can turn off the auto-adjusting stuff that messes with gamma exposure. yes, we'll have an invisible dinosaur on the cup. So you'll see through the cup and me. And you'll wonder why my drink is not spilling everywhere. Arid Tag! Whoa! Welcome back! Hey, Arid Tag! Yeah, we haven't seen you in ages. I am actually... So, I went and I finally refixed everything in the mud branch that we had going, and I am actually going to get that working again. So... Matt, so as I mentioned, I wrapped up the Learn to Code section, so we're done with doing the beginner stuff, so if you have a more advanced question, this is a great time to ask it, and I would gladly answer it. So, so for anybody that remembers, we actually have a branch in our bot that is a text adventure game, we'll call it. So think like Zork and that sort of thing. That started getting developed for it, long time ago. And I started working on the code for that again. And I've been refixing it for a little bit now, and have gotten it to the point where it's not broken anymore. Yes, it's Arid Tag. Arid Tag is back. So this is our... We called it a MUD, and that's a multi-user dungeon, multi-user dimension. Arid Tag! With the 5-month resub right there. Awesome, thank you for the Twitch Prime resub there, Arid Tag. You'll notice that, so welcome back. You might notice that you've got subscriber icons. I actually got those a month before they allowed affiliates to have them. And so I'd been sitting on those for a while ready to go. So as soon as they allowed affiliates to have subscriber badges, I enabled ours. And you'll notice some people have eggs. You are hatching out of your egg right now, your little baby dinosaur. And if I chat, hi, you'll see that I have recently come out of my egg. So the 6-month one, once you get your next one, will be that little guy right there. So your next one. So very, very cool. Awesome. Welcome back, Arid Tag. And if anybody else wants an egg, and you have, say, Amazon Prime, then you have Twitch Prime, and that means you have a free subscription to a Twitch channel every month, like what Arid Tag just did. So if you want an egg, you want to be part of the Cool Kids Club with a hype emote and everything, that's how you do it. And it literally costs you nothing. You're already paying for Amazon Prime. Okay, so I mentioned that we have this multi-user dimension, and for anyone that doesn't know, that's basically a text-based adventure. So think command line thing, and what we're doing is we're building it so that, welcome everybody that was over in CSharp Fritz's stream. We just got that auto host. White Knife, why C#? So that is a fantastic question. C# is actually a very nice language. As Mage says, why not? And that is actually a very good point. Why not C# is really a good answer on that one. So here's the idea with C#. C# is a fairly popular language. So that's one nice thing about it, is that there is a large community of C# developers that are out there and can help you. So the same thing can be said for a lot of other languages as well. C++ has a big community, Java has a big community. You could be a Python developer, there's a big community there. You could be a PHP developer, they have a large community. There are a lot of large communities about things. Oh, you tried to learn C#. White Knife, have you been here for most of the stream? If not, check out some of our earlier videos, and I actually talk about learning C#. So we're doing our series Learn to Code in C#, and we're teaching from the absolute beginner how to use C#. And as Trampampam says, jokingly, that we're Microsoft fanboys, it's not totally wrong. Oh, and yes, Boomster, that is a very good point. I probably should mention something about Q&A. Yeah, make sure you hit the, hit that link, and it will take you here, and you can find out about this. We've actually recorded 6 previous episodes. This is our 7th episode of our Learn to Code series. So if you want to find out more about this, this is the place to do it. we will walk you through basics of C#. I answer all kinds of questions through these streams, so take a look at them. They're really good. And that is hilarious. I'm sorry Andrea knew. The Nightbot gets confused, so be careful about writing things like vb.net. It's not a banned word, but the bot is dumb and thinks that's a link. Okay, so why C#? So one of the reasons I like C# as much as I do is the fact, yeah, it's not a problem, it's the bot, not you. One of the things I really like about C# is that it is a language that is always improving. So there are a lot of languages out there that are not getting a lot of improvement over time. Thanks, SmartASCII, yeah. I don't actually hate VB. So if you look at different languages, so Java, for example, is very similar to C#. So if you know Java and you know C#, you can read them both really easily because they are such similar languages. And that's intentional. So Microsoft built C# as a replacement for Java. They're both based on C++. They're just advancements on a previous concept. They're building on top of other languages. So C# over Java is really a lot of times the question because they can be used for the same types of things. And some of the reasons that I would cite for why you should be using C# is actually Microsoft, funny enough. And it's really the stewardship that Microsoft has with the language. It's that it's always improving. So let's look at this. C# releases. If we look, you'll notice that C#, 3 more rows. The history of C#. Here we go. So we are on version 7.3 of C#. Do they not have the dates of these? I want the dates, guys. I want the dates. Does this have the dates? There we go. Okay. So here's the example. So C# 1.0, January 2002. So at this point, we're saying that C# is, what, 16 and a half years old? So the language has been around for quite a while. But notice that C# 2 came out in 2005. Then we get down here to 7, and we have March 2017, and then August 2017, and then November of 2017, and then May 2018. So right now, C# is doing point releases. So that's why we're getting fast changes to the language. Up to that point, it was always large releases. Now, C# is always getting a lot of improvements. If you actually look at what was in a lot of these advancements, they had all kinds of new stuff. So the code that I've shown you guys here, this was not in early versions of C#. That var right there was not there. This is called a generic. That was not there in early versions of C#. String is null or white space. That was not there in early versions of C#. All kinds of things that we used were not there in early versions of C#. We're using them all the time. There's link, there's lambda expressions, there's so many cool things that are getting added to the language that it's getting faster and better all the time. And it's not just the language, it's the framework it's running on. So if you've heard us mention .NET Core, that's because .NET Core is the fast, new, light, cross-platform framework that C# runs on now. And really, if you see the benchmarks that they're doing with C# on .NET Core, it is insane how fast it is. It is really, really impressive stuff. So C# is actually giving us more access to things that used to be part of their unsafe code. So for anyone who doesn't know what that is, unsafe code lets us do some things with like the low-level stuff that C# is doing. And a lot of other programs are doing. So think like code closer to C and C++, but written in C#. And you can do more of that kind of stuff in 7.3 than you can in, say, like C# 6. So what I love about it is C# is advancing and improving and making all these changes, and that's what's neat. Whereas in other languages, those changes aren't coming as quickly and as nicely. So even when they get them, they're not always as nice an improvement. So that's why I like C#. Exceptions, there are a lot of good languages, so I do want to point out, if C# is not your cup of tea, don't program in C#. Choose the language you like. If you like Python, use Python. You like JavaScript, use JavaScript. You like Java, use Java. There's not really a such thing as a bad language, but the best places to be, in my opinion, are places where the language is improved. And I apologize about the lag there. Language is getting improved and maintained. There's a big community of developers to help with questions and things like that you have and help you learn and improve. And those are the big things. Yes, Arid Tag, the dark days of no generics. What else did I miss in here? Which programming language do you use? English, duh. Well said, well said. Retro Bear, but always improving is valid for many languages. A nice high-level language with great adoption, which makes it a good choice, as many other high-level languages, I would say. So why not C# is as good an answer, I guess. Yeah, that's well said, Retro Bear. So I would argue that if you look at Java, some of the things that they have added where they were improving the language are actually just lies, and so that's why I'd argue they didn't really improve the language. They just improved, they added new syntax for the old way of doing things. So that's one of the differences. Is VS Code nice for C# or should I stick with Visual Studio? Code my coffee. It's up to you. So I usually write in Visual Studio, but for our Learn to Code streams, I use VS Code, which is what you guys see around me here. This is VS Code. I like Visual Studio. It's heavier weight. It's this one here. And it does a lot more stuff for me, so I like this, and I have a big beefy computer that can run it. So that's just me. Upside to VS Code. Run on not Windows. Yes, Arid Tag, that's correct. If you don't run on Windows, you need VS Code, not Visual Studio. C# is faster than VB.NET, also VB. Oh, yeah, so VB has a nice community. The problem that VB's had for a while, and why I try to steer people away from it, is it was very clearly not the language getting used by Microsoft, so I was always trying to warn people that eventually Microsoft's going to step away from it. Even if they tell you, we'll maintain it forever. It's like, yeah, they always will. It's going to get maintained. They're going to keep it around. But someday will come where new tech is going to be made by Microsoft that does not support VB. And that day is here. ASP.NET Core does not use VB for the back end of its Razor pages. So if you want to use the current web technology from Microsoft, you're not using VB. So that's one of the things that is not so great about that. Pongies, yeah, it is a good one. Have used VS Code. I love Python, but I find C# a nice challenge for me. It's faster. Actually, it depends on what you want to develop. Yeah, Mage, that's one of the big things. It depends on what you code and how. What is the ASP.NET Core alternative in Java? I don't know what their current was, what their alternative to ASP.NET Core is. I don't know what the current Java web development, like, if they have a nice new lightweight one. I saw the name somewhere, because I've talked with some Java devs about it. White Knife, yes, you can use it in Ubuntu using .NET Core. You have Legacy.NET 2 app, which is kind of MVVM architecture, view model raises. Hang on, I'm going to read Matt's question here. Now I want to make a web server app. Matt, that's a huge question. Ask that over in the Discord. So go over to our Discord and ask the question over there, because that's a big question. You can debug, and for anybody that is wondering, you can join our Discord and chat with other developers. So if you are looking for a community of other developers to talk with, that is a great place to do it. Oh, hey, we have a few Italians here. Nice. Okay, you can debug plenty of code. I'm not sure 100% if you can with C#, though. But for Java, Code My Coffee, yes, you can debug C#. 100%. You can do a whole bunch of C# has really good debugging support. Laughs and Xamarin. Interestingly, we actually have a few developers that that I've met. So we have some of our tech people that are here in the chat room. I have met through Twitch gaming streams, because I also watch Twitch gaming streams. I don't just do the programming stuff here. So that's part of how I got into programming on Twitch. Is I was already on Twitch with gaming stuff, and it's funny because a couple of the developers that are here in the chat today are in the same state in the U.S. that I am, and and it's kind of funny. It's like, yeah, no, I met them through, like, you know, gaming stuff. Turns out they're both tech guys too. So I thought it was kind of interesting. Got a few of them. There's actually another gaming streamer that I watch that literally lives like a couple of miles away, so that's also the funny ones. So you guys, like, being a pair of Italians that are like, oh, hey, wow, you're also from India. It's like, yep. It's weird when you find people that are in some proximity to you on Twitch, and you're like, I'm on the internet. How are you? You're near me? That's weird. Okay. Any other questions from anybody in chat today? Let me just make sure no one's been, like, whispering me or anything, because I don't actually check those while I'm on the stream. That kind of stuff. Nope, none over there. Oh, there actually might be some Brazilians that are streaming programming. I do know that we have some viewers that are from Brazil that show up from time to time. Okay, nothing over there, nothing over there. Okay, looks like I don't have any messages. This is the beginning. So what's the point of arguing about different languages? If you know the principles of coding, it's pretty easy to change language. Yeah, so, no, you're absolutely correct. This is a beginner level stream, so for most of the beginners, for most of the stream, we were going over the basics. But at the end, I let people ask whatever they want, so even if it's, like, a higher level thing. You are absolutely correct. Changing languages is easy, but what you gotta remember, Punkkiz, and I apologize if I butchered your name there. Hey, I gave it a try. The idea here is that we might choose certain languages for certain types of things, or we might prefer them, or use them as the default. Because if I could program something in one of 3 languages, I might choose the one I like the best for it. And what I want people to remember is that while I can go and learn another language, you know, I could just go learn it, and it's basically just syntax, because programming concepts matter a lot more than the specifics of a language. Certain ones are better for certain tasks. They're more optimized for certain things. And so that's actually one reason why I say, even though, yes, I can learn another language, there's still make a choice of the one that I want to use. So yes, you're totally correct. As a programmer, I expect, even when I hire someone, if you don't know the right language, like, oh, no, our code's all in this, that's fine. I don't care. It's basically, you can learn a new language, right? Good. All right. You don't know CSharp, but you've worked in JavaScript before? Good. It's, you know, it's close to the same. So you can learn it. But that doesn't mean that you might say, like, oh, well, we should be doing this, you know, in, someone could come along and say, oh, you're doing that in C#, well, it'd be way better if we did it in this. So, anyway, what kind of gaming streams do you watch? Specific games or cool small streamers? Kazru, so I watch a lot of different gaming streams. Some of them are small streamers that I like to watch and support, and they're fun, but I also watch some specific games. So, so one of the games that I played a lot of, and I still watch people play professionally, I watch Overwatch. So Overwatch League, and the Overwatch World Cup is going on right now, so well done Finland. They did very well this year. So if anyone in here is from Finland, congratulations, your team had a fantastic showing for the first group stage of Overwatch World Cup. Other things, I like Diablo 2, so if anybody knows that one, that is actually a classic game. Big fan of it. It's very, very good. And I do still watch some people play that. Chili Pops, yeah, you can absolutely ask questions. So we're in. Sorry, I really should update and let people know that we're doing Q&A right now. So yeah, we're just towards the end of the stream we often do Q&A. So I'm gonna change a thing. coding Q&A starts after. All right, updating that. So now we're still programming, it says, but it has fixed that. Cool. Arid Tag, speaking of D2, I'm very, very slowly working on a Diablo 2 engine implementation in .NET Core. Arid Tag, that is amazing. White Knife. So the best description of what C# is mostly used for is it is actually building a lot of websites. So I would say the majority thing is probably ASP.NET websites, but there are a lot of programs that you don't realize are written in C#. In fact, there are a number of games. So plenty of Steam games, if they're written in Unity, they're often using C#. So you'll get a lot of games that are running that. So plenty of video games are written in C#. There are plenty of websites written in C#, and there are desktop applications written in C#. I will give you one example. This one right here, Visual Studio, is written using C#. Which is kind of nice. It's using WPF, so WPF and C#. You have a loading screen displayed and animated. Oh, that'd be hilarious. Yeah, that'd be a little bit difficult to add the D2 game to it, but Arid Tag, that's a very cool idea. Yeah, so wait, as Andrea says, there are a lot of desktop applications built in C# as well. I would guess that the majority is websites, but it could be web apps. Kazru, I used to watch some Fortnite, but I got bored of watching Fortnite pretty quickly, actually. I got bored of playing Fortnite pretty quickly. I got bored of PUBG before Fortnite came out, and then Fortnite got me mildly interested again, and then I was like, oh yeah, this is fun for a while, and then I stopped playing that also. They're all, I mean, they're good games. It's just, it was a little too repetitive for me. Chili Pops, awesome. Appreciate the follow. The first thing that you're wanting to develop is an application to be installed onto an Android tablet to control the child's content on YouTube. Oh yeah, no, Chili Pops, you could absolutely do that. So you could make an application that was just essentially a wrapper around YouTube content and check the YouTube API if you wanted to do that. If you wanted to go that route and wanted help from the DevChatter community, I would recommend you use a technology called Xamarin, which I don't know how experienced you are, and then I typoed it. Xamarin, and wait, hang on, what? FF00FF, welcome, thanks for following, everybody. Okay, so yeah, that is actually, so, is Xamarin expensive right now? I didn't think Xamarin was expensive since Microsoft picked it up. Anybody know on that one? I thought Xamarin basically became free once Microsoft picked it up. Am I wrong? Maybe I'm wrong, Nick. I could be wrong. Chili Pops. That's a good question then. Okay, cool. Yeah, it is free. Okay, so yeah, free versions. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. I was gonna say, I was pretty sure they had free versions for free tools for running Xamarin if you use the community edition of Visual Studio. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks for the confirmation. I'm pretty sure. Like, don't quote me on this one. I haven't bought it in a while. By a while, I mean I've never purchased it. I don't play much, but I think Fortnite is pretty cool, which is probably pretty fun. Yeah, no problem. Yeah. Yep, okay, awesome. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, so you can check that one out. Chili Pops, I hope you... So, if you checked out some of our previous content, I would really recommend, if you are new to programming, I just posted a link in chat there. Whoops. Let's open that in the correct window, please. I meant to go here. So if you follow that link, it'll take you here, the link I posted in chat, and this is our Learn to Code in C# series that is here on our DevChatter channel. And this series of episodes, you can watch each one, will get you some basics of programming. I don't know how much you actually do know about programming, but if you want to learn programming, which is another just fun thing to do, I actually recommend a lot of people learn programming, not because I expect people to be professional developers, but because it lets you create. And that's what's really, really cool, is you can watch these, and we start, pretty easy level. If you have questions, you can actually ask us over in our Discord. So I linked that as well. We actually have a section for people that are learning to code, to ask questions about stuff. But the idea is that, yeah, and so okay, so you've programmed back on computers well before now, but the neat thing is, when you create something, it's really, really fun. So the thing that we all have in common is we love when you create some new thing in your program and you see it run and you're like, whoa, I did that. It's really cool. And you build this new thing and it's like, whenever you see your code work, you're like, that was really cool. Even if all it does is like print out a number. Oh, Hinkor. Yes, C# runs on Linux now. So, I don't, so it did before on Mono, but check out .NET Core. So take a look at .NET Core. It's actually really fast and is a very good language. So, I do recommend it. It's another tool in tool belt. If you have other languages that work for you, then yeah, you don't need to learn C#. But exactly, as Eric Tech says, why do you need any particular language? So you could say that about any language. Why do you need that one? I would give JavaScript one of the only ones of like, yeah, you're doing web dev, yeah, you need JavaScript. But for any kind of other application you're building, there's always more than one language choice. JavaScript obviously being the exception for a long time of that's the only real way to do client-side code on a browser. There's some exceptions to that, but for the most part. No, I have not done UWP with .NET Core because I believe that's not even going to be a thing until .NET Core 3.0. So we're on .NET Core 2.1 right now, technically 2.11. But when .NET Core 3.0 drops, we are going to have .NET Core running for all of the UI types that are traditionally .NET full framework only. So WinForms, WPF, and UWP will all be .NET Core. And no, I have not written a UWP app in .NET Core. I really hope C# Fritz does not write that book, Janiscu. Oh, are you? I figured it, yeah, see, I figured it would be pretty nice. And welcome everybody, thanks for the follows, I'm noticing them coming in. And yes, as some people mentioned, so CodeMatrix and Zazizoo, the WebAssembly allows us to run other code on a browser other than JavaScript in a nice way now. So C# in a browser instead of using JavaScript is now possible. So C# has been always left out. I'll just wait until I'm forced to learn. So Hinkor, I actually do recommend people learn C#. If you don't want to learn it, don't. But if you have any interest at all, I do recommend it because it is a very useful language for a lot of reasons. So, but yeah, if it's not your wheelhouse, it's not your wheelhouse. But feel free to watch the stream still, and you can see what kind of cool stuff we've actually got in C#. I'd actually recommend you check out some of our later episodes. So our regular ones, which, if you're wondering, you can type schedule and put in a location, just pick one, and it will give you our schedule in that place. So we actually do 4 streams a week, Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. And today was one of our Learn to Code streams. And Learn to Code is just it's our beginner stuff. And on our regular episodes, we're at a higher level working with, any really not, I'll just say, it's not just beginner only. So we welcome the beginners to show up to those, but it's going to be harder to keep up, but it's still a cool thing. So let's see. Yeah, I saw Fritz tweeting about it, but I thought he was saying he wasn't going to do it. How long do you think it would take for me to learn to code well enough to be able to program my app? Chili Pops, it depends. If you just want to get an app that's like Battleship Gray and kind of works, it might not take that long. You probably just need some basics. I guess it depends on how much time you'd be willing to devote to it. I don't know. There might be applications that people have already written that do what you're looking for, though. The restricted just educational stuff in YouTube. I would Google for that and see if you can find it. But if you're interested in learning to code, then, like, just as an aside, then yes, I'd recommend taking a look at it and seeing if you can make it happen. C# in a browser with what? Oh yeah, Blazor. Blazor is how you do it. C# in a browser. How's the progress with .NET WebAssembly compiler? I'm not. Unity support. Yeah, so that's the neat thing. What Janiscu just mentioned. Unity running in WebAssembly is a really neat concept. Yeah, so C# running in a browser is Blazor. Blazor. Really? Thanks. So basically the idea is up to this point you've always had to write C# as your backend and JavaScript as your front end, and I'm glad you like the new feature, Aaron Tag. Now you'll be able to do your C# code in your browser. So this is one of the funny things. Can you do it without .NET running on the server? You can, but I don't know why you would. If you're going to do C# in the front end, I assume you'd do C# in the back end as well. I thought they'd have a cool little thing. And I love how they have this experimental tag up there at the top. They really want you to know. Get involved. Anyway, so I want to point out regarding Blazor, because it's using WebAssembly, Blazor is not like Silverlight or Flash or something like that. This really is just going to run on your browser. So it's going to be as easy for someone to use as running JavaScript. In fact, it's going to be the same concept. It's going to work with the same elements that JavaScript does, which again is going to make it about as dangerous as JavaScript is. Which means you don't want to store things like private information in your Blazor in the browser. You want to store that on the server and just communicate with the browser. So the same types of things that we do, treat it like your JavaScript. That's the idea. We are definitely going to do some Blazor stuff on the stream, although we're not currently doing any projects in Blazor. And part of the reason for that is I do want to mess around with it. However, I don't want to start a bunch of Blazor projects and be constantly updating them. So the fact that it's currently listed as experimental means that at any point that could just get cut and it'll go away. And it also means they're going to make massive breaking changes the whole time. So I don't want to be left fixing the code all the time. So that's why we're not doing that yet. But we will once it leaves experimental and maybe gets to a preview state. And we might play with it a little bit, but we're not going to build a project on it. Awesome, Chili Pops. If you have questions, let us know. And seriously, for anybody that's in chat, check out our Discord to be able to talk with us after the stream. And Unity 3D Game Engine posted WebAssembly is here. Janiscu, I love that. If they're actually going to make it so that Unity can be used super nicely with C# as the front end, that is going to be amazing. So we're going to have some fantastic browser-based games, which Unity already delivers, but I can only imagine how much control and how many nice things we're going to get out of having WebAssembly for that. My teacher's neat client-side login authentication when I was taking my driver. Very nice, Kasru. Yeah, so a lot of people have done the client-side verification stuff for login, and yeah, that's a really bad idea. I think we can all figure out why. Yep, pretty funny. Let's see. As Unity is going to be more exactly, Janiscu. Essentially, so if you were doing Unity for web-based stuff, it was going to be JavaScript to do a web app. Obviously, is what was going to happen there. But more C#, more. Woo, yeah, C#, all the things. That's my cup of invisibility. Fun fact about WebAssembly is that it can be modified with a regular JavaScript shim until all browsers reach complete support. Oh, yeah, exactly. That's one of the nice things at a lot of points is that you can shim a lot of things. Anyone try the Feisty Cherry Diet Coke yet? What's with the throat burn? Arid Tag, I don't know what you're talking about. Don't know what you're talking about. Oh, and I also should apologize to everybody on the stream because a thing happened. This is not Pepsi. This is Coca-Cola. It's a Coke Zero actually, and
is it true that you lost your Pepsi endorsement?
I hadn't heard that.
So, as you can probably guess, I lost my Pepsi sponsorship, so... No, I was just kidding. I didn't lose my Pepsi sponsorship. I never had a Pepsi sponsorship, not sponsored. But if anyone in here works for Pepsi and wants to help me get a Pepsi sponsorship, I would love it if they would, send me some Pepsi on a regular basis. That'd be pretty good. I'd drink that stuff. Yeah, so for anyone who doesn't know, that clip is from a movie called Mystery Men, and I am a big fan of that movie. It's really as awful as it seems. Not exactly, Lucky Derby. Not sponsored by Pepsi yet. That is precisely the point. Have you tried iOS programming? Yes, I have actually tried iOS programming. I did iOS programming back when Objective-C was the only way to do it, and I will tell you my favorite quote about Objective-C, because I love this quote. I thought Objective-C was one of the ugliest languages I had ever seen, until the Stockholm Syndrome set in, and then I absolutely loved it. Objective-C is not a very pretty language, but once I used it for a while, I actually like Objective-C. It's weird. It's kind of like what happens if you took C++ and just made it a little weirder. And that's basically what Objective-C is. And I will tell you, after using it for a while, I do like it. It's pretty good. Tensive, welcome, hi. You can't be drinking more of that invisible stuff. Yes, I'll be invisible, Caster. That's exactly right. Yeah, so, weird plus plus. So, Objective-C, here, hang on. J? Let's take a look at some code. Here's the Wikipedia page for Objective-C. And I apologize about this being white instead of, a dark theme. I don't get much control of that. Tensive, if someone actually asks me a question, so we're in Q&A right now, but if someone asks me a question that is about programming and I need to write some code for it, then I will actually pull out something and we'll code and write something. So we're done with the significant coding portion, but that doesn't mean that we won't, do a snippet here and there of something. Yeah, so some people prefer light theme over dark. The reason I do dark theme is because the people that like light theme are generally okay with it over a stream, and the people that like the dark theme really complain when you use a light theme. So I don't know what the lighting's like in your space, so... But you are correct, the light theme is actually scientifically easier to read It's just it might hurt people's eyes over time, so that's why some people prefer the other. So Objective-C has some weird code. When you look at it, really the only way I can describe it is it feels like just like ugly C++. I used it for a while, and then I started to like it, but it's just a weird one. I don't know. Not sure I can get used to it. Okay. Reading through all the stuff. You stumbled upon a Chrome add-in called Dark Reader. Oh! Kazru, that's neat. So, like, it just takes any page and just automatically converts it. Crichton. Entity Framework. I use it for some of our projects here. Generally in my own projects, I don't use Entity Framework all that frequently. I like to use a micro ORMs, so think Dapper and things like that. Although I do sometimes use Entity Framework. And one of the things that I like about Entity Framework is that I can just run a template in Visual Studio and be up and running with login authentication and have authorization features and a quick data access with Entity Framework that's right there. There are some things that aren't so nice about it all the time, and it's a little overbearing, but it does work. And one of the reasons I use it in here is because I think a lot of you are going to use it because it's the default option from Microsoft, and so it's nice to be able to show it, and it works very well. Who cares about the theme? OMG! Yeah, exactly. So yes, hilariously, people do complain about streamers' themes. If we have one they don't like, you'll get complaints about it. But yeah, welcome to programmers. We're going to get an opinion from everybody on everything. Yeah, as Lucky Number 7 says, it's not optimal code. So the SQL that Entity Framework will generate is not ideal. For the basic stuff, it does fine. For complex queries, Entity Framework does not come up with the best solution all the time, and that's because it's a really hard problem to solve. It's basically trying to write code for you. So, Arid Tag, have a great one. I will see you next time. Hopefully you'll be here more often. We love having you here. So, take care. EF code first, never model first, though. Yes, SNB is correct. So there are a bunch of different ways to use Entity Framework, and the one we recommend is called code first, and that means you write the C# code that you want first, and then create the connections to the database and the database itself from that, not the other way around. So there are like 3 ways you can do Entity Framework. If you can't trust their theme taste, how can you trust anything else they're saying? Oh, Smart. Have I mentioned that I love Smart ASCII? That guy's ridiculous. Okay, so... Alright. Hang on. So here's one of my favorite things. What is this? I don't... F1... So, select a theme. So here's the cool thing, is you can... Whoa! Oh, that got bright. So they have various versions of all the different themes. So if you're in VS Code and you don't like the theme, you can actually just hit F1 and hit enter on color theme. It's one of the options. You can just type in theme and you can find it. And now this is going to hurt everybody. I apologize. I'm going to flip to the light theme, so close your eyes if you need to. These are all the light themes, which when you suddenly switch into them, it kind of hurts a little. And then back into the dark themes. So they actually came with a bunch. Now, I am assuming that you can get more, not that I have tried to add additional themes, but I don't see why you wouldn't be able to get customized themes from Visual Studio Code, but it's really nice, because I love that you can just select through those, and it shows you the change. VS Code did some really nice stuff with this. Crichton, you just switch jobs, and your current uses EF for everything code first, and you've gotten used to it. And yeah, exactly, Crichton. You need to run the profiler, and you need to find out when it's doing something wrong and fix it. Which it does sometimes, and that's okay. You gotta remember, it's saving you from having to write the code. That's the whole point. So, give it a chance to try, and where it messes up, go ahead and fix it, help it out. So, that's the cool thing there. But yeah, I like Entity Framework. It does its job. And I like Dapper as well. So if anybody hasn't looked into Dapper, because I did mention that, and since we don't use it on stream, I should mention it. Whoops, that's not the right Dapper. Right, Dapper's a word other than outside of programming. Derp. Alright, so Dapper is a lightweight ORM. It's a micro ORM is usually what people call it. And the reason for that is that it actually uses some of the existing connection tools that are inside of .NET already. And it just gives you a simple way of... So ORM, for anyone that doesn't know, is an object relational mapper. And that essentially means that it's going to be taking your objects from your database and it's going to put them, it's going to hydrate C# objects from them. And you're going to, you know, that's essentially what it's going to do for you. So that you can work with C# objects instead of having to deal with low-level SQL. And that's what this gets you. So with Dapper, it works a little bit differently. You do write the SQL, and that's what's interesting about it. And then you pass in the parameters as part of the query, and then it gives you back full objects. So you pass in objects and things like that, and you work with C# objects, and it makes it kind of nice. So take a look at Dapper if you want, and if you're wondering, where is Dapper from, you'll notice Dapper is inside of Stack Exchange on GitHub, because Dapper is the ORM that is used by the Stack Overflow websites. So that's what Stack Exchange is. So Dapper is in production use at Stack Overflow. So it's kind of cool. So SmartASCII, you define your C# objects. You just define the classes that you want, and it automatically matches up based on the names of the properties. So you create your database, you create your classes, and you just wire them together, and it's a way of connecting the two. So that's why we call it a micro ORM. And what you can do is you can use other libraries that deal with database migrations to do those kinds of database updates. So Entity Framework has built in its own system for doing database migrations, which makes the changes to the database. If you're using a micro ORM, you're going to have to either do it yourself or use another tool that just deals with database migrations. So database change management is the technical term for what that is. Let's see. You like high contrast themes with pure blacks, which is weird because a decade ago I hated that theme. Hankor, yeah, so I was the same way. I used to not like the dark themes, and then I got used to them, and now I'm addicted to the dark themes as well. Hot dog there from Windows 8. Yep, no problem, everybody. Let's see, so Dapper seems great for a quick start on a small project. Yeah, so SmartASCII, if you're doing any lightweight projects, I recommend using Dapper. It's very good for it. I highly recommend it for, yes, GatherPL. Yes, it can absolutely do that. Dapper's great if you're doing like microservices, for example, as well, because you might want something lightweight. Yes, SmartASCII, that's correct. Any record set. Okay, well. Sadly, the reason why on Mondays and Tuesdays, why I keep the stream to about a limit of about 3 hours is that I do actually have stuff that I have to do. But before I go, I want to mention a few things. First off, if you love any of the discussions that we had here today, click the follow button to make sure that you can show up to our future stuff. If any of that was interesting, that's the way you can get notified of our future streams. So go ahead and click that button. If you want to catch our future Learn to Code in C# streams, so our beginner level ones, which is what today was, I just linked in chat the C# Learn to Code streams. So that link will get you the information about those. Our next one isn't scheduled yet. I will get that set up. Janisku, I don't have... Yeah, I know. I need to get the solid link set up. which I don't have set up. That is on me. I apologize about that, everybody. But let me get you a link to that. So Solid Saturdays is something people just mentioned in chat, and I want to tell you about that, so don't duck away just yet. I want to share this link, copy to clipboard, there we go. Add Solid. Let me just put in the link for now. Oh, whoops. CMD add Solid. I don't even know how to use my own commands, apparently. There we go. So that link that I just posted there in chat will get you information about Solid Saturdays. And if you, obviously you probably don't know what that is, the solid principles of object-oriented design are some design principles for developing code in object-oriented languages, not just C#. It would apply to anything that's object-oriented, so Java, whatever. And we are going through, essentially, on those streams, what we do is I discuss in the beginning the concept. We talk all about it, I describe it, I say when it's used, when, like how you want to use it, when to use it, why we want that, and what the benefits are. And then we look at some code examples from our own code of how it is following that. And we discuss the idea of how, like, why that's useful, why it's valuable, and what we get out of it. And then we'll spend the rest of the day doing our normal coding, and we'll be pointing out things about that design principle. So on Saturdays, so last Saturday we did single responsibility principle, and this coming Saturday we're doing, it should be open-close principle, yes it is right here, and then the Saturday after we do Liskov substitution, then interface segregation, then dependency inversion. So we're going to talk about each one of these and focus a stream on each one of these concepts because Solid is so important. We want to make sure that we've got some streams out there that talk about it. So if you want to catch those, you can get reminders just for the Solid streams by clicking the Remind Me button, but you can also just make sure you attend our Saturday streams, which are at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and convert into your own time zone. And if you can't convert into your time zone, just say schedule, and wherever it is you are, whether it's a city, country, state, whatever you want to use, and that will get you our schedule. What else do we want to mention? Oh, if you want to talk with any of the rest of us, feel free to join our Discord. It's basically like chat. It's a chat application that's used by developers that are on these Twitch streams, and it's also used by gamers that have Twitch streams. So it's common for gamers, but a lot of developers use it as well. That's like me. And so think like Slack, but for gaming, streaming, that sort of thing. So that's what Discord is. If you want to see the old archives of our videos, you can find some of our videos here on Twitch. They only go back to a certain thing, and you can also find the older ones on YouTube, so you can find those out. And Kazru is special, so there you go. You can follow me on Twitter, I'm at Brendonius, or if you just want DevChatter stuff, you can follow DevChatter on Twitter as well. And then other than that, feel free to check out any of our extra links if you want to support the channel. And that is about it. Hey, Lucky Number 7, you're not. Are you streaming today? Do you stream today? I don't know if you stream today. No, not today. Okay, well, in that case, I'm not going to host you. If you're not going to stream today. Sheesh. Might have hosted you otherwise. So, anyway, yeah, no raid for Lucky Number 7 when he's not streaming. That's just silly. Oh, awesome. So, I'm not in Discord while I'm streaming. Obviously, I'm streaming, so I'm not paying attention to the Discord, but I have a feeling that it was probably welcoming, and if it wasn't, I would be very surprised if it wasn't. AWS, who's AWS? I don't know who AWS is. So one of the problems, so I know a lot of people that just raid or host anybody, but I like to at least, know who it is I'm raiding and be like, yeah, that person's good, I like their content, before I just, raid a random person. So what do they, who is it, what do they do? I have a feeling it's not, the actual Amazon Web Services. Let me, hang on. Are they programming under programming? Are they just AWS? Yeah, they're just AWS. Oh, they're under IRL. They're not under programming. That's kind of funny. I wonder who is it? I wonder that they have doing that. Huh. Well, I've used their stuff before. I use AWS. Yeah, they're under IRL. That's kind of weird. I usually like to, host a smaller thing, like not a, like a streamer, not an organization most of the time. Oh, Inkor, I apologize. You probably got. Yep, links get messed up by that. Anyway, sure, why not? I'll host AWS, this programming stuff at least. So, I want to thank everybody for showing up today. And chatting, hanging out, asking stuff, doing anything like that. However you participated, always appreciated. Whether you're just sitting here lurking, we really appreciate it. Is a game developer creating a pretty cool game. Co-op 56, I will check them out, and if I like it, I will maybe think about hosting next time, because that means there's a good chance that they'll be streaming the same time next week. So, thanks everybody. And have a great rest of your week. Hopefully it started off well. And happy coding. We will catch you all, tomorrow? So, 21 hours. So you only have to survive 21 hours without a DevChatter stream. That's not very, not even that long, actually. So take care, everybody. Thanks. Have a great one.